What up, Don't One Pride? This is the Roar of the Lions UK podcast, the podcast where one pride goes worldwide. My name is Antony Fitzpatrick. I'm joined this evening by Ryan McCluskey, which can only mean one thing. It's time for the college football podcast, PAC to the future. And yes, I'm proud of that one. We are continuing our conference previews as we make our way through the summer. We've got some interesting little. We're doing some little segmented groups today. We're not doing a full conference, but we're going to get to that. But first, anyhow, Ryan, how are you doing? It's hot as hell here at the minute, but you get to fly away in a few days and chill. How's things going?
Yeah, good. Yeah, like I say, right now it's not very pleasant over here. I don't do good weather. And to be fair, I'm going to one of the busiest cities in the world, so we've got a full itinerary. There'll be very little chill. So it's going to be a pretty hectic holiday. I imagine we've got a lot planned. But yeah, Japan, go Thursday, arrive sometime Friday after like what will be like 20 hours of traveling. Honestly, I want to die because I'm a very irritable baby when I travel. Don't like set up. I go stiff, get comfortable. So yeah, but yeah, be there a week, and then yeah,
Oh,
do it all again on the way home, which is usually the easy bit. Getting there, I'm not looking forward to.
nah, you just sleep on the way back, can't you? You don't have to worry about it, and it's all good. But yeah, that should be good, and hopefully it's a little bit cooler than it is here. But yeah, anywho, I say we are continuing conference preview season today. So what we're gonna do, given that Ryan is on holiday next week, and the big conferences take 2 weeks for us to do. I didn't want to start a new one and then not have him here next week and then have to do half of it on my own. So we've mitigated some of the smaller groups into one big group this evening for us to do. So basically, we're going to be taking a look at the FBS Independents, and we're going to be taking a look at the remnants of the Pac-12, which is now the Pac-2. So we've got 5 teams on the docket this evening that we are going to take a look at. Quickly before we do, just going to get all the housekeeping stuff out the way. So we've done all that. The Rural Lines UK Discord, if you want in on that, just let us know. We will fire you a link across. The main podcast, if you haven't seen it already, you can go back and check that one out. We were doing the Detroit Lions free agency class for 2025. Who will we keep now? Who will we cut now? Who will maybe tag? All that good stuff. So go in, let us know what you think about it. And yeah, give that a check out there. Don't forget to like and sub to everything. We really appreciate it. Lions Nation Unite as well. We are part of Herman Moore's pet project to bring together all the best in Lions YouTube content creators together. So support Herman out there. Don't forget, we're a Twitch affiliate, monetized on YouTube. We've got tip jars if you want to help us that way, great. But we just love having you all in the building with us. And one other thing quickly this week, as Ryan is away next week, I'm gonna be going do something by myself. So I'm just gonna be doing a little college Q&A to keep me going until we get Ryan back for all our guests and everything we're gonna have later on in the summer. So if you've got anything you want to ask, if there's anything you want to know, just put the questions in the comments. I will be watching as this premieres on YouTube, and I'll put them all in a document. I will get it all done up, and then we'll do a show next week. I'll hopefully do it live so you can ask me on the night as well, but we'll see. So if anything you want to know, position groups, players, all that sort of stuff, just anything. You want to pick my brains about college football, you can do so. And we'll do that next week. Right. Let's just get straight on with things because these things take a little bit of time to do. So, as we mentioned, we're doing the Pac-2 and we're doing the FBS Independents. We're going to start with the Independents first. So, for those who may not know, the FBS Independent schools, basically, they're 4-year institutions whose football programs are not part of an NCAA affiliated conference. That means the FBS Independents are not required to schedule each other for competition like conference schools do. They can create their own schedule. They can schedule who they like. But you will find with most of them, they at least have a loose affiliation to a conference so that they can get 4 or 5 games out of them to flesh out their schedule, because it is hard for the independents to get them all together. There's 3 this year. and that number is going to be going down. So we've got the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, we've got the University of Connecticut Huskies, also known as UConn, and we've got the University of Massachusetts Minutemen, also known as UMass. And as I just mentioned, in terms of alignment issues for independents, the number has fallen from last year from 4 to 3. The Army Black Knights have joined the American this year, so you'll hear about them when we do our American preview. And next year, the UMass Minutemen, they will be rejoining the MAC after they left the MAC because they didn't want to join the MAC fully 10 years ago, but now they are going to join the MAC finally. So it's going to be down to just Notre Dame and UConn. And before, I guess we start on the teams, right? A quick thing about the independents. When we started doing these previews 2-3 years ago, whatever it was, there were 7 independents. Obviously, we lost BYU to the Big 12. We lost Liberty and New Mexico State to the CUSA. We lost Army this year, and we're losing another. Is the age of independence coming to an end? Because obviously, the only 2 teams we've got left now, Notre Dame, the power struggle between the conferences and wanting to hoard riches and everything, somebody's going to offer them a deal they won't turn down eventually. And then you kind of got UConn just sat on there on their own. Do you reckon we're done in the terms of the FBS Independents now, or as the conferences get bigger and a lot of these sort of middle and lower teams get pushed right down the pecking order in the conferences, maybe we see an influx of independents again as teams look to escape from there? What do you reckon?
I think with TV rights and agreements, it's going to become very hard for teams in conferences to become independents. They'll be giving up a lot of money. Like I say, they're sharing the rights. The time of the independence is over. With the expansion of the playoffs coming and maybe getting even bigger in the future, Notre Dame, they're going to need a conference because it'll be the easiest route in. Like I say, and I think in future as well, like I say, we've seen it with the NFL where you've got YouTube, you've got Amazon, you've got everyone want to Peacock, everyone want to show a game. Like, give it a few years, you'll have I don't know, the Hulu Big Ten, and everyone in the Big Ten gets millions and millions and millions of dollars. Like, so you're going to get massive conferences sponsoring like it's a big corporate, like you say, I don't know, the Target SEC. Like, I know, like it's going to happen. People need to accept, like I said, with the influx of more teams coming to FBS, more money, more viewing rights. Yeah, they just need to bite the bullet now and do it. And once you get down to 1, UConn aren't going to sit on their own because who's going to want to put them on their schedule? Like I said, they'll just get swallowed up by one of the smaller conferences. And like I said, with more FBS teams coming up, I reckon in the next 2 or 3 years, actually 2 years, I say we have a whole new conference.
Ooh,
created. Like I say, some will move over, and then you'll get, like I say, a whole lot of FBF teams that come up, and they just create a new conference. Just put load in, like I say, and jumble all about you. But there's no reason anymore to be independent. I don't see what benefit you get really.
So are we talking maybe about the collapse of the ACC then, with Clemson and Florida State and all that? Possibly. Is that going to be, and then like sort of the
PAC there, you get the teams from the PAC 2, you'll
2?
get some teams, like I say, the Mountain West, get, like I say, a big influx of FCS teams. Yeah, you're only 18 to 36 months away from another whole conference or 2. There'll be enough teams to make one of this, right?
Ooh, maybe interesting.
I think realignment, like you say, has only just started.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're going to be in for a lot more of this. Just spitballing here, but Notre Dame, like I say, they are the prize jewel. They're one of the most, financially viable institutions out there. People love to watch them. Who do you think gets them?
Uh, Big 10 or Big 12. I'd like to see them follow USC. So we can have the shillelagh in a conference. I think that'd be good. But yeah, I think the Big 12 will need them in a year or 2. Because like I said, their big teams are leaving.
Yeah. And
So like they can fill up all that.
I agree. And as we're going to discuss a bit, like Notre Dame's big rivalries are all in the Big Ten. Michigan
Yeah.
State,
It just makes
USC.
sense to put them there.
Yeah, it does feel like I would have said the ACC because they have the loose affiliation with the ACC right now, but that's probably going to implode soon.
The
So
ACC feels like it's hanging by a thread.
yeah,
Which
it
to me,
feels.
It's very weak, is the ACC. I wouldn't be joining it. You join it, and then what if it, like, say, it crumbles? You don't want to be the one holding it together.
No, no, absolutely not. So yeah, we're going to go through those three FBS independent teams, and we're going to go through the Pac-2 as well. So obviously, one of the college football's biggest storylines last year was the implosion of the fifth Power Five group, the Pac-12. They couldn't renew their TV deal. Teams wanted money. They just couldn't get anything on. So the Big Ten, the Big 12, the ACC all swooped in and basically picked the bones of the conference dry to the point where there's only two teams left standing. Those two teams are the Oregon State Beavers and the Washington State Cougars. Now, whilst they are still technically representing the old Pac-12, the Pac-2, for me, it basically falls under the independent banner now. They are independents in their own right. They have created a loose alliance with the Mountain West, which will allow them to fill out their schedule this year. But again, just before we start on the conference, we talked about like the future of the independents, but the future of the Pac-2, they're still trying to save it. Like the two teams are trying to get the rights back. You figure they're going to try and cut a deal with some of the best teams in the Mountain West. And you're a Pac fan. Is there any future for it? Or is this just kind of a case of we're going to see highest bidders get these guys now when all is said and done?
Nah, Pac-12's done. It's solid. Like I say, and Pacific times, no one wanted to stay up till 4:30 a.m. Like I say, across the world to watch Arizona State v Washington State. Like no one was watching it, was it? Like Pacific football, it struggles because the time zones are rough. Like I say, they're the last games on the weekend, and like I say, they've all dispersed now. They're all going to be putting in a lot of miles, but they're all going to be getting a lot of money. No, I think you either absolve the Mountain West into the Pac-12 or you scrap it because, like I said, the commission and that not a lot of people trust them, do they? Like they've had a quite bad reputation for a couple of years. You just scrap it and you let these two do what they want. Like I said, do they come into the Mountain West? But yeah, the Pac is basically over, and that's bad. Like I said, because it's a power conference essentially gone. Like I said, these two teams could, like I say, win out all year. I think might not make the playoffs. They might get no consideration whatsoever, just because now, like I said, they've had to pay like $10 million each to play the Mountain West. Does that feel like money well spent when they should have been trying to join another conference last year? Probably not. No, they were too slow, and now they're footing the bill for it.
I tell you what, we'll talk about it later, but you want to see the Beavers schedule this year, even for a Mountain West one, it's rough. And what they've gone through. But anywho, yeah, we're going to go through all this. So let's start with the independents first. So say five teams today: the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, the Yukon Huskies, the UMass Minutemen, and then the Pac-2 teams, the Oregon State Beavers, the Washington State Cougars. We are going to start with the independents, and that means we're going to start with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, established 1887. They play at the Notre Dame Stadium in Notre Dame, Indiana, South Bend as well, for those who know that. The reason why they're independent currently, well, as we were sort of chatting about earlier, they're one of the most financially valuable football programs in the country. It negates the need for them to join a conference to secure revenue because already a lot of money passes through there and they can kind of have their cake and eat it currently. They maintain a loose association with the ACC. They schedule at least 5 games a year with the conference. Like I said, these independents generally loosely associated with someone so they can get those games in there. The rivalries, there are many. We'll just go through the main one. And as Ryan already mentioned there, USC is Notre Dame's primary rival. They compete annually for the jeweled shillelagh. And this is one of the creme de la creme of the rivalries there. It's produced 39 national championships, 15 Heisman Trophy winners, and nearly 200 consensus All-Americans throughout its history through the 2023 season. It's considered one of the most prominent rivalries in college football. Through the 2023 season, Notre Dame leads the all-time series 49-37-5. And they won last year's encounter as well. The shillelagh they actually play for, it's an Irish club. It's made of blackthorn saplings from Ireland. It has "From the Emerald Isle" engraved on the end of the club. For each victory, there's a respective jeweled ornament added to the club. When USC win, it's a ruby-adorned Trojan head. When Notre Dame do it, it's an emerald-studded shamrock. And then if they tie, in the rare event that they do tie, they have this mixed Trojan head shamrock medallion thing they used. The original's on display actually at Notre Dame. They had a second one commissioned in 1995 because they ran out of room on it. But yeah, this is very much a fiercely contested rivalry between these two. And if they do go to the Big Ten, you will see it most years going forward, hopefully. The other rivalries they have, there are a lot. I will go through them with the other teams when we get to them because you can spend forever talking about the Irish's rivalries. Navy, Michigan, Michigan State, the Catholics convicts rivalry with the Miami Hurricanes, which became so intense that the rivalry was actually discontinued, and the teams to this day refuse to play each other. But like I say, we'll cover those a bit more in detail when we get to those specific teams. In terms of the recent records, in 2022, they were 9-4 as an independent. In 2023, they were 10-3 as an independent. So the coach is Marcus Freeman. He is 38. He is in his third season. He's a defensively minded coach. Started his career in 2010 as an analyst at Ohio State, before moving on after a year to coach linebackers, first for Kent State, then 3 years at Purdue. Then they promoted him to co-defensive coordinator. He caught the attention of Luke Fickell at Cincinnati. They hired him outright as defensive coordinator, where his career really took off. He created one of the most formidable defenses in the AAC over those 3 years. He won the defensive coordinator of the year in 2020 for the entire FBS, and that earned him the attention of much larger programs. And Brian Kelly brought him to South Bend to be part of the Notre Dame family there. But Kelly left after just one season when Freeman arrived. And in the wake of his departure, Freeman was the guy chosen to be his successor. Now, it's not been easy so far for him. He was the first coach in Notre Dame history to lose his first 3 games in charge. He lost a bowl game, and then he lost the first 2 games of his first season. They had big shock home losses to Marshall and Stanford in that first year before they did recover to a 9-win season. The record did get slightly better in year 2. They reached double-digit wins, and they have successive bowl wins under him as well. So he's got an overall record of 19-8. But expectations in South Bend are for playoff appearances and national titles. And in that regards, 8 defeats in 2 seasons is a little bit too many for his tenure so far. They've not come close to getting to the playoffs, and in part, it's down to losing the big games. They couldn't put away a very poor Ohio State team at home last year. They lost on the road to Clemson and ranked Louisville, which is games playoff hopefuls should be winning. They did beat USC for the shillelagh, but USC were a fraudulent team. And we said that all year. Year 3, Rye, this feels very critical for Marcus Freeman. Like, simply put, they've got to make the expanded playoffs, and they've got to be competitive in them. If you can't be one of the best 12 teams in the country in year 3 of your tenure, it's going to be very hard to envisage a world where he gets a year 4, because Notre Dame and his fans, they won't give him that long.
No. When the playoffs were expanded, it feels like they were almost expanded for a team like Notre Dame. Like I say, big powerhouse, can't be the top 4, don't make it. Fine, we'll add more teams in, and then they have to make it, surely. It's boom or bust for me. If he's not one of the best 12 teams in the nation, don't make the playoffs, I fire him. Simply not good enough, because regular season wins, bowl wins, don't mean anything to a program like the Fighting Irish. They can't win a conference. They can't make that route. So they're going to have to go to the watered down playoffs. They were not good enough simply to be considered as one of the 4 best. So we've had to expand the playoffs just to help them. Like I say, so if you don't take this olive branch you've been given, then yeah, pack your bags, Max Freeman. He'll get a good job. He, as a defensive coordinator, someone will snap him up. But yeah, if he wants to keep his job and go into year 4, I don't even know if 1 and done in the playoffs would be enough for to get rid of him. But come, like say, week 11, like I say, he has got to be making the playoffs, like I say. And like I say, he wants a good ranking as well, like not just scraping at 12. Like I say, he needs to be there between like 7 and 10. I want that home field advantage. Like I say, he needs to be in that middle ground, not one of the outliers for the wild card. So yeah, it's everything this year. And like I said, the record so far has been good. He's had some good play. but this team's had a lot of turnover right now. So what is going to work with this year? We're vastly different to what we saw last year.
Exactly. I'm with you. It's like you've got to get into a 12-team playoff here. Like, I mean, the only time they've not made the playoffs was it 2020? They got boat raced by Clemson, I think. It was like a non-competitive game whenever the last time they got there. And like you've got to they demand more. So I like him, but results matter this year. You're gonna have to really set the tone going. In terms of the draft history for Notre Dame, they have plenty of players drafted in 2024, which goes into they're going to have to replace something. Obviously, the left tackle Joe Alt was a top 5 pick, went to the Chargers. The right tackle Blake Fisher, he was round 2, went to Houston. You got the linebacker Maris Leofau, went to Dallas. Cam Hart, the cornerback, went to the Chargers. J.D. Bertrand went to the Falcons. Audric Estime to the Broncos, and Javonte Jean-Baptiste to the Commanders, and they had a bunch of UDFAs as well. In terms of the Lions' last pick from Notre Dame, 2020, round 3, pick 67. He had a brother here, Ryan.
Like I said, I didn't like the pick at the time. Didn't stick around too long, but I could see him having a really good year this year. Joe, the first year he leaves the Lions, watch it all click and come together, and that'd be so frustrating.
It would. It would. Of course, we're talking there about Julian Aquara. He was our last pick from the Fighting Irish. In
Where's he
terms,
gone?
was he with the Eagles at one point?
I think he's with the Eagles, yeah.
I think he went to the Eagles, he's been cut, but anywho, yeah. So in terms of the results in 2023, they had the Island game to start the year. They played the rivalry game against Navy, absolutely wrecked them 42-3. Then they beat Tennessee State. They won at NC State. We'll forget about that. They won at home to Central Michigan as well. They started 4-0. Then they lost at home to Ohio State 17-14 in a game which frustrated the hell out of me. They should have won that game. Then they won on the road at Duke. Then they lost on the road to ranked Louisville 33-20. Then they beat USC at home in the Shillelagh, and they absolutely wrecked Pittsburgh at home after that. But then they lost in Death Valley to Clemson. But then they finished off with wins over Wake Forest at Stanford, and they won their bowl game against Oregon State. But brackets, Jonathan Smith and half his team had left Oregon State by then, so they were really in the thick of things. In terms of the rankings, their total offense was actually 29th. So they had 432.2 yards per game, and the scoring offense was 7th in the nation. They had 39.2 points per game on average. The total defense was 5th in the nation, 276.3 yards per game, and the scoring defense was 7th. So like top 10 units for everything but the total offense there. The rushing offense was 27th. They had about 185 yards per game and 28 touchdowns, obviously fronted by Audric Estime. Rushing defense was 26th, only 120 yards per game and 14 touchdowns given up over the entire season. The passing offense was 48th. They had 246.5 yards per game and 31 touchdowns with Sam Hartman. And their passing defense was 3rd in the nation. Only 157 yards per game they gave up, and only 8 touchdowns through the air in an entire season. That's less than 1 a game they gave up in that regard. In terms of sacks, they were 42nd with 31. Tackles for loss, they were 57th with 75. The offensive line was good. Sacks allowed, they were 19th with just 16 surrendered, and tackles for loss allowed, they were 16th with just 54 given up. And then the turnover margin, they were 20th. Gained 24 and lost 17. I mean, it is hard when you look at that, right, to see where is the obvious problem this team had here. But I don't know, for me, like that Ohio State game was mentality. They not big game winners, and that's maybe where you've choked on the road to Louisville, on the road to Clemson, under pressure against ranked teams or should be ranked teams. It seems to be more of a mentality issue than a skill issue with them.
Yeah, because their schedule was a cupcake. They battered everyone that they should have beaten comfortably because they picked a lot of crappy teams. That 0-4 start, laughable. And then, yeah, Ohio State, I watched that game. Ohio State was shit. and Notre Dame did everything they could to not win that game. Like I say, penalties, sloppiness, just not actually fundamentals, like I say, and mentality lost that game. They should never have been losing that game because the Buckeyes were not good. Going to Louisville, last year Louisville were very good, like I say, but they were pretty much outplayed. And then a Clemson team, that was one of the worst losses because Clemson, like I say, K Klubnik, so up and down, so sloppy. I'm pretty sure at this point Will Shipley's hurt as well at 31-24. He missed a lot last season with like an injury. And that Clemson team for me, it was not good. Like I said, but they went into there and like I said, they should have been beating teams like that, but no, like sloppy errors, mental errors. And the fact is, like I say, that for a defensive head coach, a loss in Louisville and Clemson conceding 64 points. And like I said, their defense was very good. Suddenly their defense just went totally walkabout. So yeah, they stat padded very well, and that say their rankings look really good, but in reality, we know they didn't really translate to a lot of stuff. On paper, they're one of the best teams in the whole country, but we just know that wasn't true.
No, and I don't think you can glass the USC win as a good one because outside of Caleb, like, that defense was terrible. So there is no signature win on there, is there? Like a big signature win where you're like, yeah. So yeah, that's where it is with them. You got to win the big games, and that's going to be the thing for them this year. So how do things look this year in terms of the quarterback? So going into 2024. So it's been a big problem for some time now for Notre Dame. They just can't seem to land on a truly elite playmaker who's going to get them in the direction of the national title game. And right now they're struggling to develop an internal, long-term, homegrown option for themselves. And instead, they're cycling through veterans who are only going to give them a year. So obviously last year it was Wake Forest transfer Sam Hartman who came in. And like Sam Hartman's a very good quarterback. Do not get me wrong. He performed admirably, but again, he couldn't help the team take the leap in 1 year, and now he's gone. And now 2024 is around, and seemingly this is going to be another one and done year for Duke transfer quarterback Riley Leonard. And again, another excellent quarterback, but he's going to be in the draft this time next year. He's going to have minimal time to impress. So in his Blue Devils career, he threw for 4,450 yards, 24 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. And unlike any Irish QB for a while, he's a dual threat quarterback. Hartman wasn't, Ian Book wasn't, guys like that weren't. He's not just a drop back passer, so maybe a little change in the style of quarterback they want. He had 1,224 rushing yards and 19 touchdowns in his time at Duke to his name. He's recovering from an ankle injury that he sustained in 2023. It sort of plagued him a bit, but he's going to be more than ready to go into fall camp and the 2024 season. In terms of who's in the wings behind him, Notre Dame are desperately sort of trying to find their starter for 2025. So Steve Angeli is the veteran backup. He wants that spot next year. But you've got a younger core, and you've got the sophomore Kenny Minchie, and you've got Notre Dame's new big-time high school recruit, CJ Carr. He's a dual threat out of Saline, Michigan, one of the better QBs in this cycle. So they are trying to develop a guy for the future. But this year, right, it's going to be Leonard. They're going down the 1-year vet route again. I don't know. It just feels like all this turnover is no good for long-term sustainability, despite the fact you're getting good guys in. Like, I expect Riley Leonard to do really well here, but he's not what they need long-term, is he?
No, and I don't blame them. So they've seen the expanded playoff route, and to be fair, Riley Leonard was one of the biggest names in the portal. For me, Riley Leonard is like up here, Sam Hartman's like down here. This is a huge upgrade. Everyone knew Sam Hartman's flaws. His arm was weak. He could not hit a deep ball to save his life. We saw it at the combine, like you say, when they were doing like the how hard you can throw the ball. He came poor, like you say, he didn't have arm strength. Leonard can do everything. If Riley Leonard has a good year this year, he's going in the first round. He's got the build, the prototype, like you say, he's got everything. Like you say, just had a bad injury last year. Yeah. But as you mentioned, he's one and done. He wants a good year. He wants to be drafted in the first round. And I get why they brought him in, because the expanded playoffs. They know Riley Leonard can guide them to being the ninth best team in the nation, win a playoff game, great success. Fans are delighted. We'll worry about next year. So they've gone with a very short-term mindset. And that's fine, like I say right now. But I say, if what happens to Riley, then it's panic stations. If Riley has to miss 4 games and their playoff, like say they're 7-1, oh God, it's like say, they're panicking out now. It's what do we do now? So yeah, it's crazy that they don't have a long-term plan being such a big school. And I know, like, say, because I follow a guy called Ryan Roberts on Twitter, big NB fan. They're recruiting so well for the future. Receivers, defensive linemen. But it just seems like it's never a quarterback. Why aren't they getting the Dylan Raiolas? Why aren't they getting the Julian Sayings? Why don't they get them? For such a big school that can probably pay a big wongo in NIL. They ain't skint, are they? They just don't seem to get them. And I never understand why. So, yeah, in the short term, massive upgrade at quarterback. Back up, like say, untested, and next year, brand new room altogether. They're just going to start again. So they're preying on Riley Leonard having 14 games of health in him this year. That's what they're banking on potentially. If all happens, well, it's action stations, it's panic alert.
I mean, Leonard's going to be an interesting case study, isn't he? Like you said, if he has a very good regular season,
Like I
takes
say,
them
what
to
is
the
he,
playoffs,
6'4",
yeah.
215? Like he's built like Tom Brady, he's a bit gangly, but he's a good athlete. He's better than, like say, he can run, he can tuck the ball. Like I say, he can do it all. Got a good arm. He'll be one of the better prospects next year. Like you say,
But
he's done it at a small school.
yeah,
He's had a few niggles. He's had, like I say, one serious injury, but yeah, like I say, he could blow up this year. I think, like I say, he could be the Will Levis of 2025. Like I say, might slip to just the early second round, but someone will trade up for him straight away.
see, my intriguing thought is it's not right now the most strong quarterback class, but if he gets them to the playoffs and his stock is right up there with the best of them, is he going to want to play in the playoffs? Because we don't know how, because these playoffs go till January now. They go deep into January, and you've got to play an extra. If you're 12th seed, you've got to play an extra 2 games. Like,
Yeah.
is
So
he
the
gonna
championship now will be in February, won't it?
the championships? I can't remember when the things are, but it's late. It goes later, and there's more games. So these top prospects, like, is he just gonna get to the playoffs and be like, "Nah, fam, first round pick. I'm not gonna go any further." It's this
I
is the
would
case study I'm
I'd
looking
judge
at.
him if he did that.
Oh, I would completely, but like, I also would understand it. So, but anywho, yeah, Riley Leonard, great get for Notre Dame for this year, but they just need to hopefully develop someone else going forward. Like I say, CJ Carr's the big acquisition they've made in terms of high school recruit this year. Maybe he might be the guy. So on terms of the offense, the offensive coordinator is Mike Denbrock. This is his first season. So there's a change at offensive coordinator for Notre Dame. Congratulations to the former offensive coordinator, Gerard Parker. He has made his first move into head coaching. He's gone to the Troy Trojans, back-to-back winners of the Sun Belt, to try and continue their reign of dominance over the conference. In his place, Mike Denbrock comes for his third stint in South Bend. Last year, he was the offensive coordinator slash tight ends coach for the LSU Tigers. So he presided over that really dangerous Jaden Daniels led offense. Vastly experienced, highly talented. But this Irish offense is going to be experiencing turnover this year. But it is predominantly in areas that they are historically great at replenishing. And as Ryan said, they always recruit very well. Running back is one such area. So Audric Estime has gone to the NFL to ply his trade there, as Kyron Williams did before him. So it's a little bit of a factory at the minute, and it's time for the next man up now. So you've got the 4-star freshman Jeremiah Love. He had just over 500 all-purpose yards in his first college season, backing up Estime last year. He was running at a very healthy 5.3 yards per carry. He's going to look to step up into that starting spot now. You've got Jadarian Price as well. He's looking to up his workload. He had 300 yards at 5.8 yards per carry last year, which was technically his first year because he missed his freshman year due to injury. They've got a short yardage specialist with Jabron Payne. They bring him in to get the niggly 2-3 yard gains there, but he's very effective at it. They're bolstered by the arrival of 2 4-star recruits out of high school. They've got 6', 229-pounder Kedron Young. They've got 5'10", 200-pounder Aeneas Williams, who are going to join all those backup and special teams guys looking to break through in what is going to probably be, again, a really healthy room for them in 2024. But Jeremiah Love figures to be the guy there. The wide receiver room will look different this year, but maybe that's not a bad thing because it wasn't the best last year. The room's not had any wow factor players in 2023. Their leading receiver, Chris Tyree, left in the portal to Virginia. Their third leading receiver by yards, Rico Flores Jr., went to UCLA. But there is returning production supplemented by portal reinforcements. You've got Jordan Faison. He had 322 yards, 4 touchdowns. You had Jaden Thomas, who had 310 yards and 2 touchdowns. You had Jaden Greathouse, who had 265 yards and 5 touchdowns. So that kind of provides the backbone of a solid rotation group there. You've also got Dion Colsey, who's coming back from an injury after missing most of last year. He generally plays for them. Portal-wise, they acquired Bo Collins from Clemson. He's the outside receiver. He had 510 yards and 3 touchdowns last season. He's got over 1,300 as a Tiger. And they also got the group of 5 sensation, Chris Mitchell from Florida International. He had a 1,100 yard plus season last year with 7 touchdowns. Again, another physical outside receiver. And they also got Jaden Harrison from Marshall, 409 yards and a touchdown last year. And again, you guessed it, another outside receiver. So Notre Dame have worked really hard to get more physical presences on the boundary this season. And again, along with a very healthy group of young freshmen, Leonard is going to have a plethora of targets to hit. And hopefully one of them will break out big for him. And their high school recruiting class looks promising again as well. They've Cam Williams, he's their second highest rated recruit in this class. He's 6'3", he's 190 pounds. He figures to get into this team quite quick as well. So yeah, you're doing pretty well. And even with all those options, maybe the most dangerous weapon they have at the minute resides in the tight end room. You got Mitchell Evans. He goes into 2024 with every chance of cementing himself as one of the top tight end prospects going into the 2025 draft. He's 6'5", 260 pounds. He had 422 yards and a touchdown last year. He was second in receiving yards on the team, despite dealing with an injury. He has missed at least 4 games the last 2 seasons. He's had 3 separate injuries, including a torn ACL, and he's got a bit of work to do to prove himself as a blocker and a bit more athletically. But if he puts together a fully healthy season with prominent growth, he could be one of the team's most lethal offensive weapons with all those receivers as well. But behind him, there's not a lot. They do have to replenish the tight end room this year, but they got a lot of young guys in there as well. So you got your main guy, you bring some in behind to help out. The offensive line is going to be the key cog here. So 3 starters are gone from that unit that ranked top 20 nationally in sacks and tackles for loss allowed. You got left tackle Joe Alt, top 5 pick to the Chargers. Right tackle Blake Fisher went to the Texans. And the center Zeke Corral, he hit the transfer portal to go to NC State. New center for us. But, and as Ryan will tell you, ND develops offensive linemen better than most. No more so than at that left tackle position. You got Zach Martin, Ronnie Stanley, Mike McGlinchey, Liam Eichenberg, Joe Alt, and you can bet your bottom dollar they have the next guy ready to go. And they do. The sophomore, Charles Jagusa, he's 6'7", 330 pounds. He's a monster. He was the 10th overall prospect in the 2023 recruiting class. As a true freshman, he saw time in 2 games. He started the bowl game against Oregon State. He was the first true freshman to start on the Notre Dame offensive line since Joe Alt in 2021. Good chance he gets the first look at that position this year. They return both their starting guards, Pat Coogan and Rocco Spindler. They got Billy Schrouth, who's played a lot of snaps at guard as well. He was filling in at right guard in injury relief towards the end of last year. You have the freshman Ashton Craig. He finished last season playing center again as injury relief, so they've potentially got their new center there. And then you've also got a few others. You've got Tosh Baker. He was the backup right tackle this year. He's a 5th-year senior, probably going to get some work in there as well. And as always, they recruit like champions on the line in Notre Dame. So they've had losses here, right? But as we know, offensive line you don't really worry about. Running backs you don't worry about. Wide receivers they've loaded up on. They do have the tight end and they do have Leonard. You have the makings of a very good offense right away there potentially, despite the losses.
Yeah, I'm quite excited by the offense. Like I say, you just take an offensive coordinator, saw Jane Daniels put together the 2nd best season behind Joe Barrow, maybe in this last century, maybe.
Oh, Bailey Zappi and Bailey Zappi.
One of the best we've seen for second to best we've seen, like I said, last decade. Like I said, I think Jeremiah Love, my sneaky suspicion is he's going to be one of the best backs in the whole nation. I think that Audric Estime has cleared the way now. This is Jeremiah Love's offense. I think he's going to run wild. Like I say, they recruit offensive linemen better than most teams in the country. So I know they lost some, but I think that won't even bat an eyelid. They will just plug guys in. Like I say, they'll be a unit. I saw Jane Greathouse. He was a big high school pickup last year, freshman year, like 6'2", 220. Big kid, good in the red zone. Like I say, Chris Terry, going to Virginia, that is a weird place to go in the portal. Like I say, because they're a bit of a mess. But yeah, like I say, so Jaden can kind of start that wide receiver one job. Got Mitchell Evans. I think they're good to go. Their offense for me, like I say, it shouldn't miss really a beat. Like I say, they've got everything they need to do. They've got a great offensive coordinator in that's just worked with, like I say, pure NFL talent. He will know what he wants to do with these kids. So yeah, they shouldn't really worry. There shouldn't be too much fall off from what they saw last year. Maybe even an improvement, maybe in quarterback play. So yeah, they've got all the pieces, like I say, ready to go essentially.
Exactly. It's kind of just, I guess injury would be the only thing there. If Mitchell Evans gets hurt, if Riley Leonard gets hurt, that feels like the only thing that would really sort of derail them at this point. So they're in a very healthy position. They say you've got depth at most positions there, and where the new guys are coming in, they generally do really well. Moving on to the defense. Defensive coordinator is Al Golden. Is in his third season now. Here's your Detroit Lions connection for the day. Golden was the tight ends and linebackers coach for Detroit between 2016 and 2019. Not at the same time, but he held both positions for the Lions. Again, vastly experienced operator. He's 59 and 59 as a head coach at college level with Temple and Miami of Florida. He's worked for multiple NFL teams, and he's doing an incredibly good job with the Fighting Irish. Year one, his defense ranked 22nd in the FBS in total defense. Year two, that jumped to fifth in the entire nation. In 5 of their 13 games, he held opposition to single-figure points, and he held a further 4 teams to 20 or less. So in 9 games out of 13, teams couldn't get more than 20 points there. They've got decent productivity from the defensive line. They got a ton of turnovers last year. And with some smart portal work, again, they've sort of negated a lot of their losses. And they should be amongst one of the best defensive units in the country again. So you start on the interior of this defensive line. And, all I'll say is good luck running against this lot. You've got Howard Cross the third, son of former NFL veteran Howard Cross and Riley Mills. They supply the backbone of this line. Both are coming off terrific seasons, even if they're both a little bit on the small side for defensive tackles. They had 71 quarterback pressures just between the two of them as defensive tackles, and they are both really good against the run. They're backed up by Donovan Hinish and Jason Onye, who have already established depth for them there, and they've plundered the portal for even more depth. So you've got the arrival of the Columbia Lions defensive tackle Quentin Autry. He is another elite graded run defender who has some sneaky pass rush skills to him as well. And this is before you even get to the guys who, like the redshirts and the freshmen, who've not even seen the field yet, who are going to be pressing for starts. The interior is going to be damn good this year. Expect it to be one of the best run stuffing interiors going. The edge room took its hits. They lost their star player, Javonte John Baptiste. He was drafted. But again, Notre Dame seemed to keep landing on good edge rushers. They had one drafted in 2023 as well, and I keep forgetting his name. You loved him, right? But yeah, John Baptiste was the guy last year, and they went straight to the portal for an established player to help them here. So Riley Leonard was not the only player who arrived from Duke. They also bought in R.J. Oben. He had half a dozen sacks last year for the Blue Devils, and he's good against the run. He's got a little bit of a missed tackle problem, but if he sorts that with his big pass rushing presence, especially with so much in talent on the interior, he's going to have a big season. They've got the 5th-year senior Jordan Botello. He holds up the big end. He's really good against the run. We've got Boubacar Traore. He's part of the depth there. But outside of them guys, you're going to be seeing new guys getting some snaps this year, but they've got the vets in place. They've got 3 edge recruits fresh out of high school, including a pair of 4 stars as well. So who knows? You might see them sooner rather than later. But again, Notre Dame usually develop this well, so the lack of immediate depth probably not going to be too concerning there for them. In the linebacker room, they lost the star J.D. Bertrand to the NFL draft. They lost Maris Liafau to the draft as well. They've got a sixth-year senior in Jack Kaiser. He's got a ton of experience to his name as a linebacker and on special teams. He'll be the veteran in the room. You've got the sophomore Jalen Sneed, who broke into the team last year. He had about 230 snaps, showed promise. But outside of there is precious little in terms of starting snaps. This is a room relying on the next group of young guys to stand up. You've got Drake Bowen. He's going to be the one who probably gets the next shot at starting. He played 12 games as a freshman on special teams and as a reserve linebacker, had nearly 100 snaps for the first team. Jaden Ausberry, he saw the field in 5 games as a freshman. You got Preston Zinter, who is the brother of Michigan offensive lineman, or former Michigan offensive lineman, Zach Zinter. He saw the field for 4 games as a freshman, and you've got another 3 linebackers coming out of high school, including their highest rated recruit for 2024, Kingston Viliamu Asa. I've seen him. He's massive. He is a unit and a half. So when Notre Dame, they're pouring resources into creating a long-term, high-quality unit at linebacker. I don't know what it'll be like this year, but they seem well set. The secondary, though, that's where some of this team's true stars lie. At corner, you did lose Cam Hart to the NFL draft, but they've got an even bigger star on the roster, Benjamin Morrison, the 6', 186-pounder. He's one of the best corners in college football. He's up there with the Will Johnsons of college this year, and he's one of the team's biggest prospects currently. 9 interceptions and 14 pass breakups in his first 2 years, and he's given up just 47 receptions on 102 targets. They've got a homegrown option ready to join him there, Jaden Mickey. He gave up just 9 catches on 20 targets last year in rotation. He should be ready to assume a larger role, as is Christian Gray. He got a pick as well last year, looked good in his 200 snaps. But just to make sure they had enough guys there, they went into the portal as well. And Ryan will know this guy. They picked the corner Jordan Clark from Arizona State to come in and provide experience and depth for the room as well. The safeties, they lost their 2 established players in Thomas Harper and DJ Brown, but again, it retains its true star. Xavier Watts had 7 interceptions and 3 pass breakups last season, and he's another threat to make waves in draft circles next year. And again, they've gone to the portal to replace their losses. They got the very experienced safety Rod Hurd II from Northwestern. Notre Dame love their Northwestern safeties, a la Brandon Joseph. He's got over 2,200 snaps for the Wildcats, so they've got a hell of an experienced pair manning the 3rd level of the field for Notre Dame there. The room behind them is young, it's inexperienced, but again, a lot of potential. And with 2 high-level vets to learn from, they shouldn't really have an issue there. I mean, this just seems like a very well put together roster. I know the edge, they want a few more sacks out of there, and the linebackers are a bit young, but like that secondary is crazy good. 2 of the best players in college football there. They're going to be a good unit again this year, I reckon.
Yeah, I think that secondary will be one of the best in the country. Like I say, Xavier Watts last year was just phenomenal. He's eyeing up the draft already. Like I say, that's another good part. John Clark, I was going to lose. 5-year starter. In the last 2 years, he's had 14 passes defended, 2 picks, and like 90 tackles. One of the best portal defensive backs. Like I say, he's going to play the nickel slot. Like I say, so he's going to get stuck in straight away. Great tackler. Massive addition for them. Benjamin Morrison. Like I say, Rod. Like I say, they had their 8th best passing defense in the nation this year. Honestly, I don't think that'll change. I reckon it'll still be top 20, top 15. It shouldn't change. Jack Kaiser, very experienced backer. Like I say, JD Bertrand kind of was like the glue, the do-it guy in the middle that he looked upon. Jack will just take that mantle from him. Like I said, they'll look to him. Like I said, they won't skip behind. Yeah, pass rush. That's where they've lost. Like I said, 2 years ago, yeah, they lost Foskey, who I loved. This year, they lost John Baptiste. So they've had a turnover on the edges, but they've brought in some guys. But a 3rd-year defensive coordinator will now to generate pressure. On paper, this roster for me is as good, if not maybe better in some parts than last year. Honestly, there's no excuses. I know they've lost guys, but they've just replaced them. apart from,
Yeah.
like I say, defensive line, like I say, there should be no issues. But yeah, I expect this defense again to be very productive, especially in the turnover market.
I think it's just very smart. You lose Jean Baptiste, you get Oban, you lose one of your starting coaches, you get Clark, you get Rob Beard in, like, fair play to you. Like, you've given yourself a chance. I really like this team this year. I'm with you. I think they've set themselves up very well for this season. But how does the schedule set up for them? So their schedule for 2024, they got 6 home games, 4 away games, and 2 neutral site games, which I guess are technically away games, but they're neutral site. Anywho, they start away at Texas A&M, then they're at home to Northern Illinois, then they're away at Purdue. They're at home to Miami of Ohio and at home to Louisville, who they'll want vengeance on from last year. Then they hit the bye. They're at home to Stanford, away to Georgia Tech. Then they play Navy at MetLife Stadium, so NFL Stadium for that one. Then they hit the bye again. And then it's 3 games at home. At home to Virginia, at home to Florida State, at home to Army at Yankee Stadium, which I think is a baseball stadium, so not sure how it play football there. And then they finish off playing for the Jules Shillelagh away at USC. So, I mean, like,
Beating
Texas.
them.
Sorry.
I look at that schedule, I think, who's beating them?
So, right, I'm going to say this. Texas A&M is a very good, for me, I think Connor Weissman is outsider for, I think he's outsider for a Heisman. Like, that for me is a really good first test for them because you've got the old Duke head coach there now. You've got Mike Elko there now. I think that's a really good test to see where they're at. But then you look after
You
that.
get past A&M, like they could run the table, couldn't they? Honestly,
So
they'd be looking for like 11, 12 wins realistically. Just
yeah, exactly. So it's the ACC teams at home. So you've got Louisville at home. You should beat them. You've got Florida State at home.
Louisville's lost a lot. Like say,
Yeah.
Max Gordon lost a star receiver.
I guess you would look at that Florida State game and say maybe that's where the season's going to be decided in terms of how far they go. Because that could be, if they lose that and then they lose to USC, they'd be in danger of slipping out of top 12 then. So, but that's a good opportunity for them, that schedule. I like it. They've got a lot of home games, and then the away games, they're against the service teams, who
Yeah.
generally they should run
Travel
over.
and it shouldn't mean a difference. They'll run through Navy and Army, don't matter
Yeah.
how well they play.
And then Georgia Tech are basically a service team sometimes with the triple option, and then Purdue, who've been nothing recently. So those are the 3 big games: away at Texas A&M, at home to Florida State, away at USC. So just to finish this off with Notre Dame, players to watch. There's a lot here. I actually probably couldn't tell you, but I've got a sneaky suspicion that RJ Oben might just be the guy who breaks out in the big way this year. So 6'3", 231 pounds, heading into his last year in college. So he needs to make this stint at Notre Dame count. He's got a vast array of techniques at his disposal to beat tackles off the edge. He makes a lot of plays in the backfield. And with this Notre Dame interior, probably the best defensive line he's played on, he's going to get a lot of one-on-one looks this year. So I think it's going to allow his technique to shine. They're playing a heavy ACC schedule, so he's going to know a lot of his opponents as well. He'll be very experienced against them. I think RJ Oben probably is going to be the guy there, but Morrison and Watts are going to be must-see in the backfield. That whole secondary is going to be must-see, so there's probably guys all over the show. So yeah, things looking good for Notre Dame heading into 2024. Let's move it on. So next, we're going to talk about the UConn Huskies, University of Connecticut Huskies. Established 1896, they play at the Pratt and Whitney Stadium in East Hartford, Connecticut. The reason for them being independent, so basically they accepted an invitation to join the Big East, which is another conference for their other sports, because obviously UConn, big basketball school. They joined in July 2020, but the Big East doesn't sponsor football. UConn wanted to stay in the American as a football-only member, but the American would not let them, so they had to go independent because the rest of their sports joined the Big East. So they've been independent since 2020, and they've not shown any inclination yet to go back into a conference. The rivalries, 2 of them dating back to the, I say 19th century, I'm probably meaning 19th century, actually, the 1800s. So UMass and Rhode Island. UMass, they face quite regularly on the schedule at the moment. It's usually a battle between 2 of the worst teams in college football. Rhode Island, they play infrequently as they're an FCS team right now. They play or used to play for what was called the Ram Napping Trophy. So all the way back in 1930, a bunch of UConn students nicked Rhode Island's actual Ram mascot. They nicked the actual Ram himself. And so they made a trophy out of it, and it went into folklore, and all that goes with it. They got a basketball rivalry with Syracuse, and they've got an unofficial rivalry with UCF as well, but they've not played it in a while. In terms of their records recently, they're 6-7 in 2022, first year of Jim Mora, but then in 2023, things went a bit backwards. They went 3-9 as an independent. So the coach, everyone will know him by name alone, Jim Mora. He's 62. He's going into his third season. He is a defensively minded coach. Interesting figure, very experienced in the NFL and college. He's worked for the Chargers, Saints, Falcons, Seahawks, 49ers in various defensive capacities. He's been head coach for the Falcons and Seahawks as well. Came to college football in 2012 as head coach of UCLA. He went 46-30 over 6 seasons before getting fired. Then he went quiet as a head coach until UConn came calling in 2021. He took over a UConn team that was dead in the water without any direction whatsoever. And by some minor miracle, in year one, he managed to take the team bowling for the first time since 2015 in what was one of the best coaching jobs of the year. And this time last year, we were wondering, could he sustain it? But UConn's a terribly difficult place to win. And if you get good players, you usually lose them pretty quickly. And year two saw a big step backwards. They finished 3-9. They ran an absolute gauntlet of a schedule. It was so tough for them, but it eases up a lot this year. So we've seen the good of Jim Mora. We've seen the bad of Jim Mora. Are we about to see the ugly as things completely implode for UConn again? Or will he rediscover that juice, the vigor and the showmanship that made year one so good? Right, this is an interesting year for UConn. Like, is this something different, or have they found their level again?
Yeah. Has he taken them as far as they can go with 6-7? I'd say he set a high bar last year. They couldn't live up to it. Luckily, UConn, like no disrespect to them, expectations, they're pretty damn low. So it's not like they expect a lot of him. But he will have to improve on last year, because at his age, and like I say, with the team looking to, like I say, try to make waves in the football, they're not going to stick around forever. Another bad year, and they might just think, let's cut ties now. Let's get out of this early. So it's a big year for him personally. Another bad year. Fan at 62, another bad year. Could step away, could resign, let's say, could retire. So whatever happens could be last year, but yeah, he may want to leave on a high.
Absolutely. In terms of their draft history, this is painful for me, but they did have a player drafted in 2024. Christian Haynes went to the Seattle Seahawks. He was pretty much my favorite player all throughout last season there. The last UConn player to be drafted by the Lions, Ryan McCluskey, 2005, round 5, pick 145. He's the only pick we've ever picked from UConn. And the only clue you're getting is you see him on TV a lot.
Is he usually talking shit about the Lions and not very supportive?
No, actually, it depends on his mood. He's just he's very opinionated. And I can't give you the easy one. You'll do it right away, but
Oh, did he once do something very stupid in an end zone?
yes, he did.
Just realised round, yeah. Oh God, is that quarterback tries 5 years? If he's the only player we ever picked from UConn, I'll be happy. I don't like Dan Orlovsky. I never have liked him. I don't like the person either.
Yeah, Dan Orlovsky, quarterback in 2005, round 5, pick 145. The only time the Lions have ever picked a player from UConn. Could have done it this year, guys. Could have made me really happy. But hey, in terms of the 2023 results, so they only won 3 games, but let's look through it. They lost at home to NC State 24-14 to start the season, and I was worried in that game because I watch it. I'm an NC State fan. Away at Georgia State, they lost 35-14. At home to Florida International, they lost 24-17. At home to number 18 ranked Duke, they lost 41-7. They lost at home to Utah State 34-33. Then they beat Rice on the road, 38-31. They lost at home to USF, goalless, and the Bulls 24-21. They lost on the road to Boston College, but only 21-14. Then they got wasted by Tennessee and James Madison before finishing off with wins against Sacred Heart and UMass. I mean, 3 wins, right? But you lost by 1 score to FIU, 1 point to Utah State, 3 points to USF, just to score to Boston College. It was just a 3-win team, but not a lot of improvement, and he might just have made it back to a bowl game. So maybe it's not as forlorn as it looks just yet. They still were competitive for the most part.
Yeah, a lot of teams probably took them, like I say, maybe a bit lightly. Like I say, teams were still overlooking them, weren't they? And they got a shot, say, even in the losses. They kept things fairly tight. I think it was a lot of time where they ran out of steam. Like I said, it was a lot of fourth quarter mishaps that cost them games. But for the most part, for a half, 3 quarters, very competitive. Like I say, it came down to 5 margins. They could have easily won 5 games last year. Like I said, if not, like I say, late game mishaps and mistakes. But yeah, they run a lot of teams pretty close. Going to Rice and winning with, like I say, a lot of Rice talent was quite a shock. Like I say, Sacred Heart versus UMass. That was the toilet bowl, as we always refer to it. Yeah. But yeah, no, the shock win at Rice was quite notable.
Yeah, so there's things to be positive about with them. In terms of how did they rank, offense in total offense was 104th, 327 yards per game. The scoring offense was 118th. They only scored 19 points per game. The total defense was 95th. Scoring defense was 96th. They gave up 30 points a game on average. Rushing offense was 89th, just 135 yards and 15 touchdowns. Rushing defense was 55th. That was pretty good. They only gave up less than 150 yards per game, 22 touchdowns. Passing offense was 102nd. It wasn't good. 190 yards per game on average, 12 touchdowns. Passing defense was 118th. 260 yards and 19 touchdowns. In sacks, they were 122nd in sacks. They only got 17 on the year. Tackles for loss, they did better. They were 54th with 70. Offensive line, sacks allowed, they were 9th. They only gave up 12. Tackles for loss allowed, they were 78th. They gave up 71. And turnover margin, they were 95th. They gained 13. They lost 17. I mean, kind of just pretty rubbish across the board there, really. That's why you're not winning those close games, because you don't have like one specialist unit that can pull you through those close games to get to where you want to go.
No, there were just no standouts. Apart from the offensive line, which was one of the most sound units in the entire country, but you can't win a game with an offensive line. It's the guys either side of it that matter, and they just lacked them in plenty, unfortunately.
Yeah, they did indeed. So how does this stack up going into 2024? What does it look like for them? The quarterback. So it seems to be a 2-way battle for the starting job here. Maybe not. So you've got the main transfer, Joe Fagnano. He was brought in last season to be the guy, but for the second season in a row, UConn actually lost their starter for the entire season within the opening fortnight. He got hurt in week 2, and that was him done. In Fagnano's case, it was his shoulder that ruled him out. His replacement was Taquan Roberson, who ironically was the guy 12 months before that who had his season ended earlier when he should have been starter. But Roberson transferred to Jacksonville State this offseason anyhow. So it's between Fagnano and new Wisconsin transfer Nick Evers. You might know this guy, right? So he's 6'3", 195 pounds. He was a highly touted 4-star dual threat prospect in 2022. He's not been able to find his home so far. He initially committed to Oklahoma, but then he went to Wisconsin. Then they got Tyler Van Dyke, and he's like, no. So despite his lack of starting experience, for a team of UConn's level, he is actually still a massive capture and has every chance of starting week 1. Like, Fagnano's got the game experience. Evers has the better tools. This is going to be a battle there. But, I mean, this is intriguing, right? Like, Evers, he's only 2 years into his college career. It's not like he's 4 or 5 years in and not played a snap at all. He's still relatively a high-star recruit here. This could be one of the more intriguing quarterback situations this year.
Yeah, like I say, Fagnano could have done really well prior to injury previously. He won the job, like I said before, so they know that he can run an offense. Like I say, Evers, but I think was very good in high school. like say 4-star, decent build, can run. Like say was one of those, like say that was like a decent level recruit, like say a top 100, top 150 kind of player in the nation, but went to like say maybe made poor choices in his schools, realized like say they've got a concrete starter I can't beat out, and like here we are now. Like say he's had to, I suppose you got to sometimes step back. You got to go back one step to go forward too. And I suppose you could think of worse places to come try resurrect your career. Like I say, if he struggles to win the job here, that would probably be a big red flag. But his name might carry a little bit of weight. But yeah, if he does win, like I say, and he is able to like get some playing time on his belt here, then that will maybe propel him for what he wants to do in the future. Or maybe he likes it here. Like I say, maybe he sticks around. You never know. Yeah, you could have two worse options battling it out. So yeah, one of them could do pretty well. Like I said, quarterback play last year was an issue. The passing offense was not very good. So it's not exactly like the bar's been set very high for one of them. So I'm intrigued to see which route they go down. High
Mm.
upside, plucky kid, big recruit, or someone that's been here was just unfortunate that they weren't able to play through last year.
Yeah, it's like when UMass took Tyson Fomachan last year, trying to turn a former high star recruit and make him into something. Actually, we'll hear about him quite shortly. So, how does the offense stack up? So, the offensive coordinator is Gordon Samis. This is his first season. So, year three, they've actually got new coordinators on both sides of the ball. Their former offensive coordinator, Nick Charlton, he's actually gone to the NFL. He's with the Cleveland Browns now. Samis is an internal hire. He's been coaching the offensive line under Jim Bora, and he's been responsible for one of the best units on the team, especially Christian Haynes last year. Overall, he's done a really good job, so he's got the role now at the top of it all. And there's reasons to be optimistic. Finding good running backs has not been a problem for this team. So last year, Nate Carter, he got himself a transfer to Michigan State in the Power 4 or 5 as it was then. But they didn't miss him. They've got Victor Rosa. He's got 1,200 rushing yards since starting as a true freshman in 2022. He battled ankle injuries last year, but he still had over 500 yards. And he's got a lot of backup here. So you have the redshirt sophomore Cam Edwards. He started at UConn as a defensive back. They switched him to the other side of the ball. And in 2023, he led the team in rushing, 619 yards, 4 touchdowns, went to over 5 yards per carry. Between him and Rosa, they've got a very good foundation to work with, but they've not actually stopped there. They've got into the portal and they've brought in even more competition. They've got Jaden Brown from Gardner Webb. He had 810 yards and 10 touchdowns in 2023. They got Malik Thomas Jr. He had 500 yards and 3 touchdowns for Central Connecticut. They've got Darrell Robinson coming in from Charlotte, and they've got a bunch of redshirt freshmen from last year's class who are moving into year 2 as well. So they've actually got a really healthy running back room. The wide receivers, they've been a bit harder to come by, not helped by constantly losing your starting quarterback at the beginning of the season and everything having to change. They've got some replacing to do. Their lead receiver last year, Cameron Ross, transferred to James Madison. Star tight end Justin Jolie. Yes, we've got him at NC State. He led the whole team in receiving yards. Now leading the way is the 6th-year graduate Brett Buckman. He had 488 yards last season. Behind him is a group of 7 redshirt freshmen. So this is a young, inexperienced group, and they know it. So they went to the portal to try and fix it, and the help comes from the Big Ten. So a familiar name, TJ Sheffield. He has over 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns in his last 3 years in the rotation at Purdue. He wants to be the main attraction, as does Skylar Bell. He had 750 yards and 6 touchdowns in the last 2 years at Wisconsin. So in this very young, talented group they've now got an invaluable injection of Power 4 experience to put into a unit in need of a boost. They're going to need some stars to arise out of the masses this year, but they've given themselves a chance. The tight end room, as mentioned, it's lost its receiving star in Justin Jolie. They got Nick Harris back. He's the blocking tight end, but he graded very poorly. I think he graded at 39 last year. Michigan transfer Louis Hansen. He dipped his toes in with 200 snaps, so you'll hope he sees the field more in year 2. They've got the giant 6'7" German Alex Honig. He's in his second year after transferring from TCU. Then you're down into the freshmen and the red shirts. They need a serious uptick from the tight end department this year. Offensive line has work to do. It's lost its entire interior. So the left guard, Noel Afori-Niadu, went to the draft. Christian Haynes was drafted, the right guard. And then the center, Yakiri Walker, transferred to Colorado in the Power 4. However, the left tackle, Valentin Sen, and the right tackle, Chase Lunt, are a pair of really good starting tackles. They performed very well last season, gives them a foundation to work with. And they've gone to the portal again. They've got, from Syracuse, Wes Herr and Jaden Bass. Herr started off as a tight end, but he's now moved on to the line as left guard. He's got Power 4 experience. We'll look to fill one of the gaps. Bass has a few snaps at right tackle, but he's looking for a bigger role on a new stage. They just recently landed the Charlotte right guard, Jakee Green. He was the starter there last year. Had a bit of a rough first season, but he brings in valuable starting reps. And after that, it's homegrown guys, but they've got a good offensive line coach who keeps churning them out. So, I mean, really, right, that you do have the potential for a decent team this year. Your running back room's good. If Nick Akers if Nick's good, then you've got a good quarterback. You've got an offensive line which has got its bookend tackles. Like, there is reason to be optimistic as a UConn fan this year.
Yeah, I think their offense can be a lot better than last year. Say TJ Sheffield, he spent the last couple of years behind David Bell and Charlie Jones at Purdue. So the production was because he was a slot receiver, because he's smaller. But this year, they may look to him heavily. He'll see a lot more targets than he did see as a Boilermaker. And he made some big plays. I've watched him a lot. Like he's a crafty little guy in the red zone. So he should flourish in his offense. He could quickly become one of the biggest targets for whoever wins the job. Alex Honig's interesting. I know in the GFL and German Football League, he was a quarterback and he came to America as a quarterback. Too big, like I say, transferred to tight end. He's massive. Like I say, went to TCU. Like I say, here now, still trying to learn the position. Be interesting to see what happens. Like I say, if they get him on the line or as a tight end. But yeah, there's plenty to work with here. Like I say, it's just who wins the jobs. Like I say, lots of young, untried kids at positions, but very little pressure on them, I must say. Like you can kind of go out there and just have fun and like say learn as you're going. There's not going to be a lot of you have to get this right straight away. They know a lot of them have like say not played college football level before, or they're just coming in and don't really know a lot of guys. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting this year.
Yeah, and like if Evers hits the ground running, if it is him and he hits the ground running, then potentially you're going to have a sneaky good offense on your hand there. In terms of the defense, we'll move over. New coordinator again. So Matt Brock is the new defensive coordinator. Jim Mora, and I didn't actually know this until, I don't know why, because we've done these things for 3 years now. He's not actually had a defensive coordinator during his tenure so far. Instead, he's ran a committee approach amongst his coaches to run the defense, which I've actually never heard of before. It must be quite rare to run it by committee, but with the defense statistically hovering near the hundreds in pretty much every discipline, that's now changed. So Matt Brock was the defensive coordinator at Mississippi State in 2023. Now, while that team had a rough year, the defense was actually pretty good. They ranked 40th nationally in total defense, and that's running the SEC gauntlet against some of those outfits last year. His rise has been very quick. He was just coaching offensive outside linebackers 3 years ago, but he's getting results. He's coming off a good season in the SEC. The coaching change is why he's still not there. Not his fault. The Huskies defense needs a shot of that momentum, and it starts with the defensive line. They need quarterback pressures. The last 2 years, I think they've had like 17 sacks like per year. It's not enough. The edge, Eric Watts, left for the NFL, but the sack leader and their pressure leader returns. His name is Price Yates. He had half a dozen in 2023. He's 6'4", 265 pounds. Going to be big for the team this year, especially as there is no depth established behind him whatsoever. The portal has tried to give them some answers. They got Jack Barton. He's a seasoned veteran moving up from the Furman Paladins. His last 2 years have been highly productive. He's got 1 year to shine on an FBS stage now. They've got Kervin Shute. He's got limited Power 4 experience with UCF. He's looking for his break. But it's going to take a big collective effort to get this room going. Things are rosier on the interior. Both their starting defensive tackles are back, and they anchored a pretty good run defense last year. That was the better part. So you got Jelani Stafford and Dalmont Gurdine. The depth room has been hit, but they've gone to the portal. They got the Kansas State nose tackle Javon Banks. He had nearly 300 snaps in the Big 12 last season for Kansas State. He's going to be a big cog in their interior rotation. They got Jaden Simon from Tulsa. He logged good snaps as well in 2023. So they've actually got a pretty good room on the interior. It's all about trying to find sacks on the outside. The linebacker room is getting a much needed makeover. And their new defensive coordinator, he specializes in linebacker training. Jackson Mitchell, the main guy, he ran out of eligibility. They lost Noah Plack to eligibility issues as well. They do return one starter, Tui Fawamuina Brown, but he had a rough first year in the role, but hopefully natural growth comes with that. And they've been to the portal again. They got Jaden McDonald. He was a starting linebacker for the Troy Trojans defense that won the Sun Belt last season, and he actually played pretty well as well. They got Julian Simon, who was a starting linebacker for Tulsa in 2023, and they got Aaron Key, who was a starting linebacker for Western Kentucky in 2023. So there is a lot of experience coming into the room to help the one starter and the crop of youngsters working their way up. Secondary, that does need to take a big step forward, and it really needs to up its takeaway count, but it's going to need some new guys. The top two corners by snaps departed. Chris Sheeran went to James Madison. Mumu Bin Wahad went to Georgia Tech. They got a few guys in there. Malcolm Bell, Demon Brinson, both saw 400 plus snaps. Isaiah Davis saw good rotational snaps. So you've got a good amount of experience still returning, but they need to up the takeaways. But maybe that comes with the D-line doing their job as well. They managed to get Jarvarius Sims from the portal from Central Michigan. They got New Mexico State corner Reggie Akels, who played over 400 snaps last season for the team who got to the CUSA Championship. And they got Jordan Wright, who's got Power 4 experience with Kansas State. So again, a lot of experience available, hopefully to help them this year, but someone's got to stand up and start getting some turnovers to help this team out. Safety room returns all its starters. Ronte Jones, Malik Dixon-Williams, Lee Millette III. They got a whole lot of experience at the position, but again, they just need to up their overall production. But it's the same safety room, a lot of continuity in there, hopefully some natural growth as well. They got the youngster Malachi McLean from New Mexico State in the portal to add a bit of youth to that room as well. So, I mean, when you look at it, Ryan, on the scheme of things, the edges, they need more production there. You wonder where it's coming from, but they've done a good job at fixing the parts of their defense they were not good at last year, and they've got some good depth. You look at both sides of the ball, and potentially they've got an up-and-coming DC who did really well with Miss State last year. I think there's a lot to be positive about for this UConn team this year.
Yeah. The only thing they need to work on, I say, is if they are able to replicate having another pass rusher to be able to get squad back, it's the fact that they say they couldn't get turnovers or they lacked the opportunities to get them. Only 13 across 12 games. Not good enough for a team, like you say, that was struggling to pass the ball. When the defense was on the field, they need to get off the field as soon as possible. So if those guys they brought in to help that beef, that interior, that middle of the field can get home and get the job done, like I say, returning a whole safety room, they've got to be better. Like I say, secondary last year, not the best, and a lot of it is coming back, which puts pressure on them to be visibly better. And they're going to have to go out there and they're going to have to do a better job at making noteworthy plays on the field. They can't just rely on the offense and they can't just rely on the pass rush. They're going to have to make plays of their own. So, yeah, on paper, they've done, like I said, they've lost a lot of guys. They've gone out there, not rest on the laurels. They've brought a lot of help in to try fix and plug those holes. It'll be interesting to see how it works, like I say, with new coaches as well, how they respond to having an actual defensive coordinator. One voice should be better than having I don't like their current kind of way they went about defensive football. Everyone would kind of just break off and go to like a different member or a coach. That seems complicated. This should be streamlined.
Have you ever heard of a committee approach to defensive coordinator before? I never have.
No, that's too many cooks, like say.
Yeah.
Calling the players, but like I say, there's too many voices. Like I say, they're all having their input on like plays, and like when you're on the field, you're all not talking to the same person. You're not
Yeah.
getting the same level of information what you need.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I know Mora himself is a defense. So you kind of figure, is it all going through him? But I guess take the responsibility away from him, let him be a head coach. That might help. But how does the schedule look for them? So they've got 7 home games and they've got 5 away games. So how do they do at home? They start away at Maryland, then they're at home to Merrimack, and then they're away at Duke. So 2 hard run games to start with. But then you've got 6 home games in a row. You got Florida Atlantic, Buffalo, Temple, and you got a bye. Then you got Wake Forest, you got Rice, who you beat last year, you got Georgia State. Then you're on the road to UAB, who are not good. Then you got another bye. Then you finish away at Syracuse, and you're away at UMass. But you look at all those home games: Florida Atlantic, Buffalo, Temple, Wake Forest, not good. Rice beat last year. Georgia State, not great. If they can have a good home run with away games at UMass and UAB, who are very beatable, like just take the Power Five teams out of there. That is a schedule which could result in a bowl season for them.
Yeah, it's going to be the home games. Like I said, they really have to do their work at half at Connecticut, like I said, because the road games, like I say, Maryland and Duke and Syracuse, like I say, you just write them off basically already. Long trip, bad opponent. Yeah, it's all going to come down to you have to win the home games. And like I say, go to UAB, make sure they've got a chance to go to UMass with 5 or 6 wins and lock it up there. That'll be the game that makes them or breaks them. They're either too far behind or they're going into UMass knowing we can lock it up here and now. So that'll be where they need to be.
Yeah, I think again, I think they might have a sneaky good year. This just sets up well for them. Obviously, a lot has to happen for it to go right, but I like their chances in terms of the player to watch. I mean, who doesn't love a good Yukon offensive lineman? Me, guilty. The left tackle, Valentin Sen, he's 6'6", 302. He is a brutish piece of Austrian wrecking machine. He's been dominant in his 2 years as a starter, protecting the blind side for the various Husky quarterbacks. He's only given up 2 sacks in 800 pass blocking reps. He's excelled against Power 5 opposition as well. Like I say, Samus's linemen, they're technically very well trained. They're highly athletic. A lot is asked of them in the run game. They have to pull a lot. They have to move a lot. He's got the build. He's got the toolkit to get a shot at the next level. And if UConn can thrive this year, leading a new offensive line for the most part in the interior, I think you're going to hear his name called in draft circles as of next year. So Valentin sends the guy to watch there. They love their guys from overseas. Like mention the German guy there. They got an Austrian on. They got Nigerian on there. They seem to take a lot of players who come across from the continents there. So good on them. Right, let's move on to the last independent standing. The University of Massachusetts Minutemen, established 1879. They play at the Warren McGurk Alumni Stadium in Hadley, Massachusetts. The reason for their independence, well, as I mentioned earlier, they used to play in the MAC up until the mid-2010s. However, they were a football-only member of the conference, and when the MAC pressed them to become a full member, they said no. The MAC said take a hike. So UMass decided to try and find a more suitable conference while temporarily becoming an independent. That never materialized. Nearly a decade later, they've just decided that they are going to join the MAC after all. So in 2025, they will be part of the MAC once more. In terms of the rivalries, in-state rivalry against Boston College, obviously Bostonized there. They've not won a fixture against them since 1978. They don't play too often. They last played in 2021. The next time they play is in 2025. They've also got a rivalry against UConn, which we have mentioned. In terms of the records, in 2022, they went 1-11. Their only win was over Stony Brook, which was FCS opposition. In 2023, their record was 3-9, but it doesn't tell the whole story. The coach, some know him as Dr. Blitz, others know him as Don Brown. He's 68, defensive coach, 3rd season of his 2nd stint at UMass. He first coached them between 2004, 2008. Didn't hold a position as a head coach again until UMass picked him back up in 2021. In between, he's mostly been a defensive coordinator. He's been at Maryland, UConn, Boston College, 5 years at Michigan. His first 4 years, they always ranked top 10 nationally in defense, and Arizona as well. He is regarded as one of the top defensive minds in the country. Coached the likes of Devin Bush, Chase Winovich, Jabril Peppers. He's led FBS programs to close to a dozen top 10 national finishes in total defense. 3 of those was in the top 3. He's known for coaching aggressive, high energy, hard hitting defenses. But this UMass job is probably one of the hardest jobs in the country right now. It's certainly a candidate in terms of trying to turn a program around. There hasn't been anything close to a winning season in the last 12 years. There were only 3 wins in the last 4 seasons before 2023. He doubled that total last year. With UMass, though, they're about to come out of the independent wilderness. Brown does need to start laying the foundations for future growth. He's got to give the Minutemen a fighting chance when they're back in conference play. Otherwise, they're just going to end up like Akron. There were steps forward last year. Now you've got to show consistency and do it again and show the world UMass is to be taken seriously. Right, it's an incredibly tough job there, but it wasn't much progress, but it was progress. Now go and do it again and show that you're for real.
Yeah. Like I say, this job is harder than UConn. Like I say, I feel like. So you've got a lot less to work on in recent years. Like I say, you've had years that were just barren. And like I say, you're a coach that, with no disrespect, bit long in the tooth, is at the end of the career. And it's like I say, they're now going, like I say, they were a stray cat, but they've now been rehomed, like I say, they're back where they were. That's not necessarily a good thing. They're getting thrown straight back into a conference that's very competitive. They don't want to be the bottom feeder straight away, so they've got to find a reason to give these kids in conference to come to UMass. They're not going to be able just cherry picking from all around the nation as an independent. They've got to get the local kids now, and that's going to be very hard if they repeat what they've done in previous years. So yeah, he's looking at the bigger picture for life after him, because whatever happens, probably his last year here, nearly 70. You'd think so anyway. Yeah, so yeah, it's bigger than him right now.
Yeah, exactly. But, you've got to keep trying to show a bit of progress. In terms of their draft history, they didn't have anyone picked in 2024. Their last draft pick was in 2021. You had the offensive tackle Lamell Coleman taken by the Miami Dolphins, picked 231 in round 7. For the Lions, you've got to go back a long way, and I don't even think Brent will remember this. 1968, round 1, pick 11, a quarterback, Greg Landry. So UConn and UMass, our last draft picks from them too, were quarterbacks. I found that funny. Just, I don't know why, but you don't expect to find a starting NFL caliber quarterback from them 2 teams. In terms of the results from 2023, they opened up with a win on the road at New Mexico State, who went to the CUSA championship game. They won them 41-30. Then they got twonked by Auburn on the road. Then they lost at home to Miami of Ohio, who made the MAC championship game 41-28. They lost on the road to Eastern Michigan, but only by 2 points, 19-17. Then they lost at home to New Mexico, but only by 3 points, 34-31. They lost at home to Arkansas State. They lost at home to Toledo, MAC champions. They lost away to number 6 ranked Penn State, hit 63-0 in that one. But then they beat Army. Yes, they beat Army, Brent, on the road, 21-14. Then they won at home against Merrimack, 31-24. Then they lost away at Liberty, the CUSA champions, 49-25. And then they lost at home to UConn, 31-18. I know we talk about, minor differences and stuff. 2 games lost by less than 3 points. That's 5 wins. That's your little bit there. And I mean, you ran a gauntlet. You lost to 2 G5 champions, a G5 championship contender, and then away to Penn State and Auburn. I mean, I feel like that's respectable for UMass.
Yeah, like I say, they shipped a lot of points across the board, but they did show they could score points. Like I say, they scored 30, 28, 31, 28, 24, 25. So they've got a lot more offense than UConn have, but their defense is a little bit more leaky.
Oh, yes, it is. So the total offense was 86th, 356 yards per game. The scoring offense was 95th. It was just over 23 points per game. The total defense was 114th, 427 yards per game. The scoring defense was 130th. Now, because the NCAA website doesn't include the 3 new FCS teams from last year, technically it was the worst in the FBS. They gave up 37.8 points per game. So basically, let's just round it up. 38 points a game you're giving up. The rushing offense was 84th, was okay. 142 yards per game, 19 touchdowns. The rushing defense, though, was 127th. They gave up 221 yards per game on the ground and 30 touchdowns. The passing offense was 79th. So again, steady, 215 yards per game and 14 touchdowns. The passing defense, and I'm going to asterisk this, was 36th. 202 yards per game and 24 touchdowns. But again, look at the rushing defense. They're not throwing on you when they're running for 221 yards a game on you. Sacks, they were 113th with just 19. Tackles for loss, they were 113th with just 54. Sacks allowed, they were 74th with 26. Tackles for loss allowed, they were 110th with 83. And turnover margin, they were 74th. They gained 16. They lost 17. I mean, like, this is trench warfare. These are trench warfare things. Like, you can't get sacks, you can't get tackles for loss. Sure as hell can't defend the run. You're giving up loads of points. You can pinpoint where the problems are here. Like I said, the offense was fine, and that's okay.
Yeah, offense above average, defense dreadful. I like how they only rank you on your yards per game because passing defense 36, but they still gave up 2 passing touchdowns in every single game of the year. If you incorporate touchdowns given away, they were probably there to be the worst defense in the country. I don't think anyone can lay claims apart from they were bad. Yeah, defense dreadful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Imagine not bad. Like I say, they do actually take the ball away, but they give it away. Yeah, so we know where they, like I say, it's the inability to cover the red zone, and they can't stop the run on the interior. Those two things decimated a season that had potential.
Exactly. Like, it's easy to see where the problems are that need to be fixed with this team. So how have they gone about fixing them? 2024 season preview. I just put in my notes here. They've got over 30 transfers coming in, so that'll give you an indication of how they're trying to fix this. Yeah, that is an idea of how they're trying to fix this. So the quarterback, mentioned it very briefly earlier, Tyson Fomachan. It's his second year. He is 6'3", 227 pounds, a dual threat quarterback with a big arm. He spent 3 years at Clemson, but he sat behind first Trevor Lawrence and then DJ Uiagalelei. And then when his opportunity came, he tore his hamstring, and in his absence, Cade Klubnik emerged. So he left. He went to Georgia Tech to try and get a starting gig, which was more worrying, and he failed to do so. So he made the drop all the way down to UMass to try and get his career going. But year one, he's been dealing with some injury issues, caused him to miss a few games. He's had to rehab it through spring training, so he's missed a bit of spring training as well. He threw for 1,500 yards on 61% passing, 6 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He rushed for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. It's year 6 for Fomachan this year. I think he does have 1 year eligible left after this because of all the red shirts, but this kind of really feels like the make or break year for him. UMass need him to be healthy, and they need him to be at least part of what Clemson bought into all those years ago with him. The backup / competition comes in the way of the quarterback Ryan Jankowski. He was the backup at Akron behind DJ Irons. And they got a redshirt freshman, Ahmad Haston, who saw some snaps in relief last year. But this is going to be year 2 of Fomachan, right? It's underwhelming first year, injured, not great. This has to be the year where he finally says, I'm a good college quarterback, because UMass need him.
Yeah. You ever look at quarterback and you think just things like outside factors and forces at work, the stars just never going to align for him? I kind of just get that feeling. I know how talented he is, but there's always going to be something that stops him, whether that's himself or injury or the team he's on. I reckon if he played 12 games this year, he would actually be very good. And I reckon he would win more games than they've won combined for like the last couple of years. Will he be able to do that? Will his body, will a defense, will his offensive line hold up? Those are the things, like I say, are out of his control, and it just feels like they're always working against him. I would love to see him because, like I say, I've seen very little of him his whole career. A lot of people have always talked about him, but it's never accumulated to anything. Like I say, the 7th year of eligibility, if he gets that extra, like say, medical red shirt, by then it's too late. No one wants him. This time next year, he'll be in the FCS if it doesn't work out for him right now. So I am praying this year that he stays healthy and can show what he can do just for his own sake so he can go out of college on a high.
Exactly. It's the same problem UConn have had. They just can't keep the starters fit and healthy and give them consistent production. But these guys are really good, potentially. So it's going to be the year of Fomachan. And they've actually made a very interesting hire at offensive coordinator that may or may not help him here. But in terms of the offense, the new offensive coordinator is Shane Montgomery. It's his first season. So the former offensive coordinator, Steve Kasula, he's gone to Michigan to be tight ends coach there. Montgomery, he has a massive back catalog of experience. He has been training quarterbacks since 1993. He has a ton of experience as an offensive coordinator and even as a head coach, but his most famous work, and this is a long time ago, came as offensive coordinator at Miami of Ohio during the era of Ben Roethlisberger. He developed Big Ben. But now he's Brown's new offensive coordinator. He's been called up very late in the cycle. They didn't lose their guy till about April, which is late for coaching hires. But can this be the guy who unlocks Tyson Fomachan? Because he spent forever developing QBs. But as we know, the offense is more than just a quarterback. What else does he have to work with? UMass had a 1,000-yard rusher in 2023. The problem is when you get a good guy, he's gone. So K'Ron Lynch Adams went for 1,154 yards and 12 touchdowns. They were both FBS records for UMass in the running back department. But at first he flirted with the draft. Then he went into the portal. He got snapped up by Michigan State. So Spartans fans, you're going to see him this year. And like I say, the problem for teams like UMass, holding on to the talent is now an impossible as an independent. The second leading rusher, Greg Desrosiers, he rushed for over 8 yards per carry last year for his 306 yards. He left via the portal. He went to Memphis. The only returning production they have is Jalen John. He had 33 yards last season. The backup quarterback, Haston, had 60. So this is one of the many positions the portal has tried to fix. That's why there's so many guys coming in. Very interesting one here. They got the former four-star high school recruit, Brandon Campbell from Houston. He had a 400-plus yard season for the Cougars in 2022, had injury problems in 2023, but healthy, done it on a much bigger stage than this, potentially ready to go. You've got CJ Hester, who's come from Western Michigan. He saw some time playing as a true freshman last season, but outside of that, it's red shirts looking to see the field for the first time. But thankfully, they do return their best receiver. The slot receiver, Antony Simpson, had 800 yards and 3 touchdowns in 2023. Will look to break into 4 figures this season. They did lose both their 400-yard receivers. They lost George Johnson III to Florida Atlantic and Mark Pope to eligibility issues. So the room needs to establish some new depth and a threat on the outside. But enter the portal again, and another intriguing prospect, Frank Ladson. He was once a high 4-star recruit for Clemson. Didn't work out for him there. Didn't work out for him in Miami. Again, a few little injury issues. He's getting his last chance with UMass, but for a team their size, that is a huge get. He plays on the outside, figures to start and be an impact player right away if he gets going. They've added another dangerous slot option in Keyshawn Brown. He's transferring in from Duquesne. 700 yards and 7 touchdowns in 2023. They got Sterling Galban. He had a 500-yard season under his belt at Jacksonville State. You got Jacoby Keeney James, who's been in the rotation at Eastern Washington, has over 1,000 yards for them. And you got Sam Staruch, who comes in from Michigan. He's not seen the field there, but a lot of new faces, a lot who have starting experience to bolster that room with its incumbent star. The tight end room lost its top receiver and blocker in Gino Campiotti. The only other tight end who saw over 100 snaps was Ine Fillet. So yet again, another room that's starting from basically scratch because he left as well. But again, they've gone to the portal, and physicality is the word of the day for them here. They've got the blocking tight end Jalen Lay, who's come from Alabama State in the HBCUs, known for their blocking tight ends. The starting San Jose State tight end Dominic Mazzotti has arrived. He had 320 yards as a receiver last year. He's a good level run blocker as well. And they got Owen Anderson from Illinois. He's had 2 years of not seeing the field there. But all these teams, they put emphasis on really tough run blocking with the tight ends. So UMass clearly trying to bolster that in the ranks. They got a JUCO tight end as well, Noah Staples, and he arrives from the College of the Canyons. That is the team's name. It's in Cal. College of the Canyons. I like that one. The O-line was not unscathed either. The left tackle, Johnny Hassard, hit the portal. The left guard, Cole Garcia, and the right guard, Marcellus Anderson, both graduated. They did keep the center, Josh Atwood, and the right tackle, Ethan Mottinger. And they've brought in a ton of portal players to try and fill the gaps here. So you've got the massive 6'6", 310-pound left tackle Luke Payton from Columbia. They got the Cal left tackle Braden Rome. He's got over 1,000 snaps in the Pac-12 for Cal. You got the Cincinnati tackle Mauglin II, the Georgia Tech guard Paul Chio, the Akron right guard Brian Kilbane, the Grambling right tackle Jackson King, and the UCLA left guard Benjamin Roy Jr. So this is an offense, right? There are a lot of new faces vying for a lot of new spots here. You've got some good receivers. You got a ton of offensive linemen to try and sort something out there. It's going to be very interesting, but got no offensive coordinator. That might bring the best out of Fomichan.
Yep, they've got a lot of new faces, a lot of guys that have got big school experience, that have, like say, got snaps at higher programs, big conferences. They're going to have to now try see who fits, like say, offensive linemen. You've got a lot of them, but it's easier said than done just plugging them together and making them work as a unit. That's never as easy. So interesting. A lot of weapons that have come in, like say, from a lot of schools that have had production. They'll be easier to incorporate in an offense, like say, with an offensive coordinator that's very experienced. He'll get the best out of them. But yeah, a lot of it is going to come down to who takes what positions on the O-line and how quickly they get the playbook down and start working together, because that'll kind of be the whole thing that unravels this. But yeah, there's potential if they can get the right guys in the right positions.
That's it. It's the risk of using the portal too heavily, having to incorporate so many guys, but sometimes you got to. You just don't have enough guys to be able to, and you've got to go heavy there. In terms of the defense, Keith Dudzinski, it's his third season of his second stint there. He's a long-term accomplice of Don Brown, one of his trusted generals. He was with him the first time around in UMass, and now overall, it's his 9th season with the Minutemen, so he's been with the team forever. His defense was horrible last year, but in year one, they ranked 55th nationally, so he's shown that he can do it. It's just the talent drain sometimes just makes it hard to be consistently good, but the unit simply has got to be much better this year. The D-line needs a major makeover. At edge, you've got Louis Laus Julian, and you've got Zakudo Iguinagu. They returned. They had over 600 snaps last year between them, but they got 1 sack combined. The rest of the rotation is gone, and UMass are just basically going to start over at the position. But the only portal help came from Wake Forest, Jalen Hudson. He's a 6th-year senior who's never been more than a minor rotational role player. So UMass seem to be putting a lot of trust in their youth, the guys who've redshirted, etc., on this one, rather than using the portal. So that's a really big question mark for them there still. On the interior, they lost their best defensive tackle and their sack leader, Billy Wooden. He had 7 sacks last year, 5 more than the next best guy. They lost him to eligibility, though, not the portal. They lost their nose tackle, Cletus Mathurin. The room needed a makeover, though. Its performance against the run, it was one of the worst in the country. They do have a veteran returner in Aaron Beckwith, and he's getting help from the portal. They got the Eastern Michigan starter, Tim Grant Randall, last year. They got Etanoza Ruben from Georgia Tech. He's got experience in the Power 4. You'd hope between the 3 of them they can form a solid group. But again, expecting younger guys to come up onto the D-line and do the work for them this year. The linebacker room was rotten for the most part, and they had a lot of guys taking snaps at the position. I just don't think they could settle on their best units, and injuries didn't help. Their best starter guy was Najee Logan, but he transferred to Indiana. You've got Garrell Johnson. He's the veteran returner. Had nearly 600 snaps last year, but needs to be a lot better. They've got some depth guys who saw good playing time. Maybe they're ready to step up. But again, the portal is where the help has come from. And they've gone down the pyramid here. So you've got Macklin Ayers. He's been a standout starting linebacker for the Dartmouth Big Green for the last 2 years. And they reckon he's going to walk straight into a starting spot there as the room gets a big refresh. And they've gone even further down the line for Jadrian Gibbs. They got him from Northeastern Oklahoma A&M, and I have no clue. I think it's Division 2, but they're way down there. But he joins a very young group who play in Don Brown's, what he calls the Viper position. They're defensive line, linebacker hybrids, and they've been training a very young group who are in the second and third years. So hopefully that youth investment pays off and can help out both units this year. And the secondary needs replacing as well. But for all their faults, UMass actually do a good job developing DBs these last few years. I mean, like last year, they sent Josh Wallace to Michigan. He went and won a natty, part of the rotation there. They lost their starter, Jordan Mahoney, to Arkansas State, but they returned their best starter, Isaiah Rutherford, and they found him a running mate out of the transfer portal. They've got the Bryant starter, Lake Ellis. He is a beast against the run. They have put a really good starting pair in there with him. And when I say they've plundered the FBS for guys, they've plundered the FBS for guys. They went to the Georgetown Hoyas for their starting cornerback, Cameron Watkins Hunter. They got Arsheen Giles, who is a 3-year starting corner for the Sacred Heart Pioneers. They got Jashawn Watkins Perkins, who was a starter for Tennessee State. And they got Brennan Bailey from West Liberty. He was one of the most sought-after Division II transfers this cycle. They also picked up Ryan Barnes from Notre Dame, who saw a little bit of time for the Fighting Irish this year. So they have gone hell for leather to get that corner room up to scratch. And generally the coaching there is pretty good. That could low-key be a very dangerous room for them next year and a fun one for Minutemen fans to watch. The safety room returns its most experienced starter in Teray Powell. And once again, they went to the FCS to refill what they lost. They got a second starter from the Dartmouth Big Green, Leonard St. Gaudin. He's an elite run defender. He's going to help out with one of the FBS's worst rushing defenses. He's going to see the field very quickly. But then in terms of the safety depth, a lot of young guys in there. So overall, right, a lot of makeover for this defense. And sometimes that's what you need. But I mean, that is a who's who, bringing up some of the best and weirdest and wonderful corners from the FCS and FB and Division 2, but they do a good job with them. So I'm really intrigued. I actually think that unit might be fun this year.
Yeah, it's a credit, and it says a lot about a deep scouting network. The fact that they're scouring every corner of the nation and they're not just going one step below, two, maybe even three. Like you say, they're going down to like proper like NIAI, Div 3, Div 2 football to find the very best. And those kids will jump at the chance to come here. Like I say, regardless of like say record, Division 1 football, huge platform for them. And they're here, they're eager. Like I say, they've got a lot to prove. Like I say, because they're very small school guys. They're trying to prove that they belong at this level with some of these guys. So they're coming with a massive chip on the shoulder straight away, which probably is why they like them. They'll come in hungry and feisty. But yeah, this whole team is getting a huge makeover. Like I say, a lot of guys that are coming here, fresh faces. It will take time. There will be a lot of teething issues. Like I say, a lot of guys that never played before or played this kind of scheme or complexity. Like I said, there'll be a lot of issues, but some of these stars, guys, will emerge and could be potential stars going down the line. So yeah, whether they use this as like a stepping stone or a platform to a bigger move, so be it. But while they're here, they need to make the most of it. Because like I say, the defense last year, terrible, giving 38 points a game. Like I said, that's got to be brought down by at least 8 points a game minimum if they want to be competitive next year.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, but you can't blame them. They've at least gone out and tried to do it. It's just that D-line remains such a big issue. Relying on your kids when you've had nothing there for years. That might be the issue there for them. In terms of the schedule, so they play a MAC-centric schedule, and, you know, they probably should because they're joining next year, but they start at home to Eastern Michigan, who they nearly beat last year. Then they're away at Toledo and Buffalo. Then they play Central Connecticut out the FCS. Then they're away to Miami of Ohio and Northern Illinois. So 4 MAC road games in 5 there for them. Then they're at home, and then this is where it gets bad. They're at home to Missouri from the SEC. Then they get a bye. Then they're at home to Wagner, but then they're away at Mississippi State. They get a bye. They're at home to Liberty, the CUSA champions. They're on the road to Georgia, the Bulldogs, and then they're at home to UConn. I mean, like, that is, fair play to them. They run a big schedule, but you have the MAC champions on the road. You've got 4 and 5 on the road. And then you've just got the small state of 3 SEC games, Missouri, Miss State, and Georgia. And then Liberty as well, just to sprinkle the icing on there. I mean, it's trial by fire. They're going to have to get good quick here. They're going to have to win some of those MAC road games.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like they're really worried about this season. They're going to get these kids they brought up, they're going to throw them straight into it, and then probably make them better for 2025. Like I say, they probably got a lot of money from these games. Like I say, a lot of, like I say, they need that, like I say, get it in the bank before, like I say, they make the move. So I get that, like I say, taking on the big teams where they know they'll lose. It's going to be damage limitation just by how many they do actually do it by. But yeah, the kids are going to learn a lot. They're going to learn quickly. It's going to be painful, but it should make them better in the long run. If not this year, next year. It's a privilege to play SEC schools and go to their facilities. Like I say, go to Georgia, go to Mississippi State, and learn from some of the best. So they need to make the most of it, because once you join the MAC, you ain't going to be playing them teams anymore.
No, no. And I moan all the time about teams playing scrub schedules and that. I will hold my hand out to them and say, well done. You've actually gone out there and, trial by fire, do it that way. All the respect in the world there. The player to watch, mentioned him already, but it's going to be this secondary. Lake Ellis, 6 foot, 180 pounds. Corners are usually fun to watch with UMass. Ellis is bringing a big reputation with him from the FCS, a seasoned vet lining up next to him. Like, this hard-hitting run defense of his nose for the ball. I expect him to shine when they're going to have a hell of a lot thrown on them. You've seen what's coming this year. That schedule, this trial by fire nature of this defense, it creates great corners. I think Rutherford and Ellis could potentially be one of the better pairings outside of the Power Four this year. So Lake Ellis, watch out for him at UMass. Right, that's the Independents done. We've just got 2 PAC-2 teams to go now, and this is a first for us, because the previous years we've done this, we've always done the group of 5, but because of the time they take and the research it takes and stuff, we've never actually done a preview for a Power 5 conference before. And this is technically not Power 5, but this is the first time we will have ever previewed an actual, they are Power 5 teams for all intents and purposes. So this is going to be fun. Going to start off with the Oregon State Beavers, established 1893. They play at the Risa Stadium in Corvallis, Oregon. Rivalries, I mean, of course, Beavers' biggest one is with the Oregon Ducks. They've been playing since 1894. They've got 127 games played between them altogether. I found this was a little niche thing for me. They play for the Platypus Trophy, and I wonder why. But actually, a platypus has both features from a duck and a beaver. So it actually makes sense. It's a very apt trophy for the 2 teams to compete over. Never thought of it that way before. They've got a long-standing series going back to the 19th century with Washington State as well. And now technically, they are sole rivals for the Pac-2 championship this year, which will at least notch things up for you. I don't know how that's going to work, but hell, go for it. Be the winner of the Pac-2 championship there. They also compete in the unofficial Northwestern series. So that's a 4-way competition between the 2 Oregon teams and the 2 Washington teams. So Oregon, Washington, Oregon State, Washington State. To win it, you have to sweep the other 3 teams in the same season. Winning more than the other teams does not count if it's not a sweep. It's not recognized as an official series, but unofficially the teams do recognize it. But with the Pac-12 breaking down, it might spell the end of this long-held tradition unless they all keep scheduling one another. Washington have actually won it the last 2 years in a row. They've swept all 3 teams in 22 and 23. In terms of the record for the Beavers, 10-3, 6-3 in the Pac-12 in 2022, 8-5. They were 5-4 in the Pac-12 in 2023, but we'll get to it. Doesn't always tell a story. The coach is Trent Bray. He is 41. It's his first season. He is a defensive coach. But before we get onto him, Things will never be the same for this Oregon State team again. Now, technically homeless after the collapse of the Pac-12, they're in this tenuous alliance with the Mountain West. As well as losing their conference, they lost their head coach, Jonathan Smith, to Michigan State, and a whole host of players to the portal. Now they're no longer technically a power team. A lot of the best players are like, nah, I want to play in the power leagues. They have gone. They are about to head into uncharted waters. And to steady the ship, like a lot of teams do when the waters get rough, they turn to one of their own. Trent Bray is Oregon State through and through. He was a standout linebacker for the Beavers in his own college career. He was a grad assistant linebacker coach for the team between 2012 and 2014. And then he returned for a third time in 2018. And he's been with the team ever since. He started as the linebacker coach, moved up to defensive coordinator under Smith, and then he's taken the top job now. Smith has gone. He also coached linebackers at Arizona State and Nebraska on his travels as well. In terms of his head coach experience, this is his first job. He had a tiny spell as interim head coach at Nebraska before they hired Scott Frost, but this is the first time he's been the guy. But under him, this Beavers defense has flourished. It's tough to break down with the run, very good at hitting opposition quarterbacks. No doubt this is going to be Bray's staple for his team going forward. He's going to want to build it on his defense and move out from there. But Rye, like a lot of teams we see in trouble, we saw it with Hawaii. They went with Timmy Chang, famous among their campus alumni. We saw it with Nevada, Ken Wilson, famous alumni. They've gone down the road of they're going to pick the guy who has Oregon State at his heart to see them through the bad times. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but can't deny he is Mr. Oregon State.
Yeah, it's a safe pair of hands. The fans were probably pretty worried when all this happened, so they probably thought they had to go out there. They couldn't afford money-wise to do something erratic. They really couldn't afford to go throw a load of cash at one of the biggest names in the country. Not that they would have got them, because they don't really have the assets right now to lure the big head coaches. So apply in-house can just made the most sense financially, and to keep the fans on side and not do something that could jeopardize the future. Because yeah, right now, very uncertain times of what's going to happen, these two. Who knows where they'll be playing this time next year. So yeah, this year's very much a bedding in year.
Yeah, I think at the core, you just need someone who cares about the university first and foremost. And generally, alumni do that pretty much. So I see why they've done it here. Quickly, in terms of the draft history, 2024, 3 drafted players. Talisi Fuanga, the dominating right tackle, went to New Orleans. The wide receiver, Anthony Gould, went to the Colts. And the safety, Keaton Oladipo, went to the Green Bay Packers. In terms of the Lions, again, this breaks me. 2021, round 7, pick 257, running back Jamar Jefferson, who I stuck my neck out for a hell of a lot. And you know what? I'm going to take this win. 3 years later, as a round 7 pick, he's still on the roster, or he's still hanging around the roster. 99.9% of 7th round picks are not at this point. So I was right, but I was wrong at the same time. In terms of their results last year, started with 3 wins at San Jose State versus UC Davis versus San Diego State. Then they lost an absolute belter at Washington State, 38-35. That's when I thought Washington State were going to be really good last year. How wrong I was going to be. But they lost that. But then they won at home to number 10 ranked Utah. They won away at California. They won away at number 18 ranked UCLA. But then they lost on the road to Arizona, 27-24, which kind of ended the Pac-12 hopes. But then they won against Colorado at Stanford. And then they lost at home to number 5 ranked Washington, 22-20. Now, if you remember that game, they should have won that game. That was when Washington were trying their best to throw away the things, and they didn't. But then they lost to Oregon at the end, 31-7 in the rivalry game, because Oregon still had something on the line. Then they got wrecked in the bowl game, in the Sun Bowl against Notre Dame, 40-8. But it's an 8-5 team, right? But 3-point loss to Washington State, 3-point to Arizona. You win those games. You should have won the Washington game. Like, that's a 2-point game. Like, the Oregon game didn't matter when it came to it. Oregon could still win the Pac-12. Oregon State couldn't. You know, pride only counts for so much in that situation. This 8-5 team could have been a Pac-12 champion. you lost 3 games by 8 points. It was just very fine margins that did it for them.
Yeah, they let themselves down. And yeah, road games with a lot on the line. Because let's say it were big pressure moments, a lot on the line. They were in the Pac-12 race. And yeah, kind of blew it, didn't they? Like I say, they really had no themselves to blame. If they win 2 or 3 of those, that Oregon game is a damn sight more important. And after Oregon, they didn't give a shit about the bowl game, did they? Because like I say, a lot gone
Everyone
on.
was gone.
Everyone was gone. Half the team didn't turn up and they weren't interested in playing. So yeah, their season fizzled out very quickly in kind of like sad circumstances.
Yeah, it was. In terms of their rankings, their total offense was 45th, 410 yards per game. The scoring offense was 34th. They scored 32 points per game. Total defense was 39th. They only gave up 350 yards per game. The scoring defense was 45th. Only gave up 23 points per game. So top 45 in every category when it comes to their offense and defense. The rushing offense was 57th, 167 yards per game, but 26 touchdowns. The Russian defense was 21st. They only gave up 114 yards per game, and they only gave up 14 rushing touchdowns over the season, barely won a game. The passing offense was 51st, 240 yards per game and 26 touchdowns. So same number of rushing and passing touchdowns. The passing defense was 82nd, 235.8 yards per game, 23 touchdowns, but you ran the gauntlet of the Pac-12 last year. There were a lot of pass-heavy teams. In sacks, they were 12th in the nation with 38. And tackles for loss, they were 31st with 81. So dominant D-line. And their offensive line only gave up 19 sacks. That was good for 31st in the nation. Tackles for loss allowed, they were 40th. They gave up 65. And then the turnover margin, they were 23rd. They had 19 takeaways and just 13 giveaways, so +6 in the turnover column there. So you just see little bits here. Like this was overall a really good team. Took the ball away a lot, defended the run a lot. They were just, again, this just came down to little moments in games, not necessarily a weakness on the team. Again, like Notre Dame, like a mentality thing here. This was a good all-round team, and I specify was because it isn't anymore.
Yeah. The only issue, like I say, was the secondary. Like say, lacking the ball players to make the plays, giving up big plays, like say, lapses in concentration. That's where they lost it. Passing defense lost them a lot of the games. Like I say, because they weren't able to stop those splash plays. So that was the only real area where they needed to improve. And that was the fact difference between 8-5 and a Pac-12 championship appearance potentially.
I mean, that's actually quite funny because the losses, Washington State, who had one of the worst rushing offenses in the country, passed the ball. Arizona passed the ball.
Or passing.
Washington passed the ball. I actually didn't stop to think about it. I don't know what Arizona's rushing game was like, but Washington's and Washington State's were bad. So yeah, there you have it. Secondary just seemed to be there. But overall, a decent team. But what's it going to be like going into this year? The 2024 season preview. And I apologize. No, there won't be any Ducks fans watching. Ducks. Sorry, I do apologize for that. There won't be any Beavers fans watching. But if you are, this preview is very difficult because so much of your team has gone that I just don't know who's really going to step in here. So as far as the quarterbacks go, I like the Beavers lost so much last year and fewer rooms were hit harder than the quarterbacks. So they lost their starter DJ Uangalele. He left to take Jordan Travis's vacant spot at Florida State. And then Adrian Childs. Adrian Childs was the shining star. He was the heir apparent to this team when DJU was done. They invested a lot in this guy. He followed his old coach, Jonathan Smith, to Michigan State, and now the Spartans are going to get to see him. So that is their starter and their succession plan gone. In the wake of their departures, the Beavers are left with they got a three-way dance-off between a veteran backup, an FCS upstart, and a four-star recruit looking for a job. So Ben Gulbranson is the veteran. He saw significant playing time in 2022. He had 1,440 yards, 9 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, but he sat and backed up DJU last year. He's the safe pick. The FCS upstart is the former Idaho Vandals starting quarterback, Giovanni McCoy. Last year, he threw for 3,000 yards, 15 touchdowns, and only 8 interceptions on the season. He had 360 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground as well. He possesses dual threat ability. The 4-star is Gabari Johnson. He only came into college in the 2023 recruiting class. He went to Missouri, but Brady Cook's got that job on lock for the foreseeable future. So he chose to move early just after his true freshman year. So this is going to be the theme here, right? There's not a starter. There's a lot of options here, but this is an interesting mix. Like, do you play? You're out of conference. You're basically homeless. You're playing the Mountain West. Do you pick a safe option, or do you go with the upstart out the FCS who fits your system better, technically, got the bigger arm better, or do you go with the guy who potentially could be really good? This is going to give a big insight into where this team wants to go this year. Who would you reckon they should go with?
I reckon because they've gone safe head coach, they'll go safe quarterback. It's Branson's to lose because he knows it. But that means I still think that maybe his ceiling is probably not as high as what Giovanni could do. Like I say, the Vandals been pretty up and down recent years, but last year Idaho were very good and they made waves in the FCS, had a very good game. Like I said, he's done it at that level. Are they ready to throw him in? Not, probably not. But I think they start with Ben. But if he does fail to deliver and disappoint, I reckon McCoy could come in and take the job pretty quickly. It's a free hit for him this year, essentially. Like I say, because they haven't really got a lot going, have they?
No, I'd pick the funky option. I'd just stick the FCS guy and see what they can do. Like, there's nothing you can lose with it, but that's just me. I guess his thing is they've got to build for the future, so he's got to decide the best way to do it. But this isn't decided yet. He's giving all 3 of them a chance to win it, so it's going to take a bit of time there. In terms of the offense, the offensive coordinator is Ryan Gunderson. It's his first season, and this is just going to be a theme for all the coaches. They've gone to former alumni for their post Pac-12 adventure. So Ryan Gunderson, he was a college quarterback for the Beavers. He started his coaching career as a grad assistant with them. He's actually been on the administrative team as a director of player personnel, and now he's back as the offensive coordinator and the quarterbacks coach. He spent the last 5 years coaching quarterbacks at San Jose State and UCLA. So he was Dante Moore's coach last year. But given the need to completely reboot the quarterback room, I guess getting a highly experienced quarterback coach in to run things is a smart move, but he's got more than just the quarterbacks to sort out now. He needs to sort out whoever's going to protect the quarterback. So the Beavers, they lost their crown jewel at right tackle to the draft. Talisi Fuanga mentioned headed to the Saints. Right guard Tanner Miller is one of many who defected to Michigan State. The left guard Hanili Bloomfield ran out of eligibility, as did the center Jake Levengood. So literally, the left tackle Joshua Gray is the sole survivor of 2023's line. They did get a pair of starters from Colorado through the portal. So Van Wells, he was the Buffalo starting center last year, and he actually played really well. So that should be their center hole fixed up right away. But then they brought in, and I mean ginormous, 6'10", and 315-pound left tackle Gerard Christian Lichtonen also transferred over. He didn't do so well last year. He coughed up 7 sacks and 8 quarterback hits, but he's 6'10". That's going to take some time to get that guy refined. But if they get him right, it'll be another huge get for the team. It's 2 guys with starting experience, which for a team that's lost 4 starters, they need. Outside of that, your other potential starters are coming out of last year's depth room and high school class, so I've no idea. I couldn't tell you. They also suffered a massive blow to their running back room in the spring transfer portal. Their star running back and 1,000-yard rusher Damian Martinez decided his future lay elsewhere. He transferred to the Miami Hurricanes in the ACC. Did stay initially, but then, spring came. He decided he'd had enough. They lost 500-yard rusher Deshaun Fenwick to the NFL draft. And then the 2 transfer QBs who transferred away, they were the only other 100-yard rushers they had last year. Literally everything in the room is gone. And once again, they leached off Colorado in the portal for replacements. They got Anthony Hankerson. He had over 300 yards in the Buffs rotation last year. They got back Jam Griffin from Ole Miss. He was at OSU in 2022. He went to Ole Miss for 2023 for some reason, got stuck behind Bentley and Judkins in the depth chart, And then they've just signed a load more running backs this year. So he's come back home. His last season as a Beaver yielded over 500 yards. But again, outside of that, it's red shirts looking to step up into this room, and I just don't know which ones of them are the guys who are going to make it. The receiver room got bled dry, like the running backs. The top receiver, Silas Bolden, transferred to Texas. Anthony Gould was drafted into the NFL. The tight end, Jack Vealing, who was third in receiving yards and had 8 receiving touchdowns, another one of the exodus to Michigan State. They did manage to steal back from the state of Michigan. They got Darius Clemens from the Michigan Wolverines. The outside receiver, he's going to be a much needed perimeter boost for them. Probably going to walk into a starting spot there for them. But in terms of what's left from last year, they've got Jimmy Volson III. He's the top returner with 154 yards and 2 touchdowns. But he's dealing with an injury that's expected to keep him out the entire offseason and may affect his participation in 2024. So again, you're going into the depth room for starters. I'm sorry I can't give you names here, but these are all redshirt freshmen. There's just nothing that can be... I can't go that deep into it unless I'm sat there watching them every day. The loss of Vealing has also opened up a big hole in the tight end room. They got the blocking tight end Jermaine Terry, the second back, but he graded out at 40 last year, struggled in both blocking disciplines. He's going to need to up his game this year. They've got Gabe Milborn. He's been working his way in through special teams, played 12 games last year, but red shirts, second years. They got one transfer in, Andy Alfieri from Cal, but he's not seen the field much. They need to find tight ends in both disciplines this year. I don't think I've ever seen turnover on this scale before. Literally, especially for when you do the Power 5 schools, generally they don't get rinsed as much because they're at the top already, but there's nobody coming back this year, and I don't know, Rye, help me.
I mean, I wouldn't. Why would I go to a team that's now homeless? The conference is in, it's based on the verge of dissolving. The coaches have gone. I mean, they're not attractive, are they? They're just not an attractive team. And that's why right now on paper, they look terrible. This year is going to be rotten. No weapons, just their own recruiting classes that have not defected, and some kids, like I say, that have come in that have offered very little elsewhere. It's going to be a proper Hodge job, like you say, of trying to get a running offense. Like I say, and unless they quickly join a conference or sort their future out next year and onwards, this won't get any better anytime soon. They need to show the world that they've got a plan, because right now they ain't got a plan.
No, when you lose so many starters.
Side of the ball is probably going to be the same story, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Like I said, I really tried hard. I just don't want to. I can't tell you how good a redshirt freshman who's not seen a snap is going to be over there. Going to spring training and stuff. I don't have. Yeah, these things take long enough without having to deep dive into spring training and try to do that. It's just you don't know until the season starts. But it's just incredibly deep in terms of the cuts. On terms of the defense, the defensive coordinator is Keith Hayward. First season, the new DC. Guess where he played his college football? Correct. They've done the full trifecta of alumni now running the show there. Head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, all tightly ingrained with the program. An interesting fact here, right? He played some ball for the Scottish Claymores in Scotland in 2002. So going back a little bit of time there, but the dude's played some football in Scotland. He's been all over the show, but most recently he was actually in the NFL as a defensive quality control coach for the Las Vegas Raiders, but he's vastly experienced in college coaching. He's been at the Beavers before. He was the guy who actually recruited players like Jordan Poyer to the Beavers, so he's a really good recruiter when it comes to the defense, but he's starting from scratch in a lot of places on a Beavers defense that has been really good these last few years. The defensive line has been driving power behind it. So much pressure on the quarterback, stopping the run makes it easier for everyone else, but it's gone. And just listen to this. The sack leader, Andrew Chatfield Jr., he's done after a 10-sack season due to eligibility. This was a very old defensive line. The 7-sack D lineman John McCartan, eligibility done. Sione Lolohea, he transferred to Florida State. He finished second on the team in total quarterback pressures. And the only other edge who got double-digit pressures was Corey Stover, ran out of eligibility. That's just the entire edge room has gone. The portal, they've tried to bring reinforcements. They got the Tarleton State starting edge Josh Griffiths, but that's FCS. They got Nick Morris, who's a starter for Northern Colorado, FCS. They got DJ Wesolak, who comes over from Missouri, but he's not seen the field in 2 years in the SEC. There's not a single FBS snap between any of those guys. So you are dipping into your depth chart from last year, trying to replace all that production with FCS transfers and one SEC transfer. I mean, they might well do, but it's going to take a whole of a lot of work to do so. The interior starters are gone as well. The 4-sack DT James Golden, the nose tackle James Rawls are both done. Like I mentioned, it was a very old and experienced D-line last year. You've got Samisi Saluni. He saw some playing time last year. He's joined out of the portal by 2 Power 4 transfers. So you've got Taiji Hill, who saw some game time for LSU last year, and you've got Tavita Pome coming from Oregon. He saw very minimal snaps last year. So this is a very inexperienced room. It's been trained in the Power 5, but it's very inexperienced, and there's no depth behind them at all. The linebacker room saw similar hits. Their most experienced starter from last year, Easton Mascarenas Arnold, transferred to USC. Their other starter, Calvin Hart Jr., ran out of eligibility. They've got Melvin Jordan IV is their most experienced returner from 2023. He has 178 snaps, and there's been no portal help whatsoever. This is a very big room of second-year guys and guys who have redshirted, vying to take over these starting spots. Not one player has come in through the portal to help the linebacker room. The secondary, I've put it, looks a little healthier, but not really a high bar here. You've got Jaden Robinson returning at corner. He had a team leading 7 pass breakups last year. And through the portal, they actually got the Liberty corner, Kobe Singleton. He had 4 interceptions, 9 pass breakups last year as he helped Liberty to the CUSA championship. So they've got a good pair of starting corners on the roster. They got Mason White coming in the portal from TCU. He saw some time in the Big 12 last year. They've got rotational guys like Noble Thomas and Tyrese Ivy. They were in the rotation last year. So there are the parts to put together a good corner room right away. The same can't be said for the safeties, though. Keaton Oladipo, drafted to the NFL. His starting mate, Akili Arnold, hit the portal also to go to USC. They got Jack Kane, who saw nearly 300 snaps in the rotation and had 4 pass breakups for his trouble, but there's nobody after him. It's all depth, and just can't pinpoint out who they're going to be. This team has just lost more starting talent than I can remember on a team in some time. There's no telling how good or bad this is going to be. That they're facing a Mountain West heavy schedule this year, which I put will help, but I don't think it will. The only thing they've really got going for them, Rye, their recruits are much higher levels than anything the Mountain West can really put together. So they've got to hope all across the board that these last 2 or 3 recruiting classes, and maybe this one that they've just had, guys are going to have to throw in, are going to be able to stand up here. Because outside of the corners, there's nothing coming back.
No, I think they're going to really struggle. Like I say, against the fact is, let's say Malachi Nelson, like I say, one of the best quarterbacks in the nation, picks Boise State over like seeing what's going on here. Could have gone to a Pac-2 side and been a starter. Like they've literally picked players because they cannot afford to be picky where they're coming from. Like I say, FCS, Power 5, and the FBS players that are coming in have never even seen the field. They're basically freshmen learning a whole new scheme. So they're not even just coming in. They've got no snaps. Like I say, they've just been practiced. They've just been on a roster. Like they are coming in fresh and as good as basically being freshmen. So yeah, I have no idea how this lot is going to come together, what you can expect. But I feel like life in the Mountain West fight, for both of these sides, could be very difficult, and at times it could get very ugly at times.
I mean, it's one of the conferences you want to at least go into. Like those teams are just known for being physical and kicking your ass, and it's going to be hard for a lot of these young players in there, like freshmen, sophomores. It's going to be a big culture shock for them.
Yeah, because like I say, when they line up against an Air Force, can they stop the run? They
Yeah,
just want to. They're going to prove to the world that they can take a Pac-12 side and just run it down their throat.
yeah.
And right now on paper, they could not stop it if they tried. They've
Can
got
you
no interior of that middle defense.
No, can you keep taking the hits and keep getting back up? And they're just going to run over and over and over again, and they just recycle 20 running back. They never get tired. That's the one big thing with a triple option offense. They're just going to keep coming at you. And the schedule, I said it was a Mountain West heavy schedule and it might be easier, but looking at this, so you start at home to Idaho State, you're away at San Diego State, then you're at home to Oregon, you're at home to Purdue, you get a bye, you're at home to Colorado State. You're away to Nevada, but then after that, you're at home to UNLV, who went to the Mountain West Championship. You're away at Cal, and that offense scored 40 points or more 7 times last year, or something stupid like that. Then you hit a bye. You're at home to San Jose State, not easy. You're away to Air Force. Then you've got your Pac-2 championship against Boise State against Washington State, and then you finish away at Boise State, who are the Mountain West champions. That away at Boise, away at Air Force, away at Cal, away at San Diego State. You've got to play Oregon at home. You've got to play San Jose State, Washington State at home. Like, that's not a gimme. These Mountain West teams, especially on their home fields, they're going to make you work for every single tiny yard you want. They will not give you a damn thing. That is going to show how tough this Oregon State team is.
Yeah, it's going to be a proper gauntlet. Whoever's on the schedule, it won't matter. Like I said, Mountain West is pretty up and coming. Like I said, they're physical. A lot of them will play heavy pass, some triple option. So they're going to see a varied style of offense. And the defenders they've brought in, some of them have not seen any kind of defense yet, let alone a defense, like I say, that's going to go, like I say, it's going to go hard for 15 minutes for 4 quarters. And like I say, are they going to be able to withstand it? And they do not have the depth as well. They can't afford any injuries these guys have brought in because there is physically no one behind them.
No, no. Like when you hit that Nevada fixture 6 in, you can really only afford to lose that Oregon game. Otherwise, you could potentially lose 3, 4, 5 games this year. Potentially. Like I know the difference between them and their recruits and the Mountain West is big, but I would not want to sleep on these Mountain West teams. They're going to want them, aren't they? This is a scalp for all these teams this year. This is the little prize to show just how good they can be.
Yeah, like I say, there, everyone, like I say, on that schedule, eye up this team. You are licking your lips, like I say, to go out there and maybe lay a bit of a statement on these sides here.
I know. I might feel like we're going to see Oregon State on the pick watch a few times this year. I'm going to throw that in as a trap game on a few weeks to play it to watch. You know what? Screw it. I'm going to go straight in here. The cornerback Kobe Singleton, 5'11", 184 pounds. He's the Liberty transfer. He might be a group of 5 transfer, but this Beavers team is so bereft of starting talent right now. He's already might be one of the best players on the team. He has been dominant in his time at Liberty. He's actually got a good group of safeties round him. And I think there's a lot of teams who are going to they're going to smell blood on this Oregon State team this year. They're going to be attacking. They're going to go throw the ball downfield. They're going to want to make chunk plays. That's going to give Kobe Singleton plenty of chances to build on those 4 picks, 9 pass breakups he had last year. I think he's going to shine in a defense which is going to take its lumps this season. So we've got Kobe Singleton there. And we're going to finish off the evening, our last team, the Washington State Cougars, to round out the Pac-2, established 1893. They play at the Martin Stadium in Pullman, Washington. Of course, the predominant rivalry. It's the Apple Cup with Washington, named so after the state of Washington's renown as a producer of apples. They usually play on Thanksgiving, Friday after Thanksgiving. As mentioned, they've got a rivalry with Oregon State as well, and they also participate in the Battle of the Palouse. I hope I'm saying that right, with Idaho. The universities are only actually 8 miles away from one another. They're both located in the Palouse region of the Northwest US. They play each other fairly regularly, even with Idaho being an FCS team, local pride at stake there. The 2022 record, They're 7-6, 4-5 in the Pac-12. 2023, they were 5-7. They were 2-7 in the Pac-12, and one of the most spectacular blow-ups of a team last season. The coach, Jake Dickert, he is 40. He's in his third season. He is a defensive-minded coach. He cut his teeth down in the FCS for nearly a decade with the likes of North Dakota State, South Dakota, before making the move up to the FBS with Wyoming, first as a safeties coach and then a defensive coordinator under Craig Bowl, who he's worked with quite a lot. Got his first job in the Power 5 with Washington State. Nick Rolovich hired him as defensive coordinator just as he was taking over the head coach role here. But after just one full season, of course, Rolovich and a big chunk of his staff were fired for refusing a certain medical thing. I'm not going to say it out loud because it just still produces lots of arguments and stuff. But yeah, that happened. They all got fired for not doing something they were told to do. Dickert was one of the few who did. He remained on staff as the interim head coach, and then they twonked Washington in the Apple Cup at the end of the 2021 season, convinced the higher-ups that maybe he should get the job permanently. It's not been easy going. Got them bowl in year one, and the team was sitting very pretty last year, 4-0, just won the big game against Oregon State. I raised the hopes that maybe they had a run at the Pac-12 in them, but then the floor just bottomed out. They lost 6 on the bounce before beating Colorado, in which was a battle of the basement in the Pac-12. Year 3 will demand improvement, especially as they will not be running the gauntlet that was the Pac-12 anymore. This is a coach who needs a big year 3. We talk about year 3s with guys. Some guys need. Dickert needs a big year 3. That implosion last year just was not acceptable. Like, they look so good beating Oregon State. That's a tough team to beat, and then to be losing to Stanford. No offense, but Arizona State. All these teams there. You've got to put that behind you very quickly. Otherwise, this new venture for them is going to have a new head coach sooner rather than later.
Yeah, this team is it's in flux. A lot's changing. They will not hesitate to pull the trigger after what was a miserable collapse. Arizona State, one of the worst Power 5 teams in the nation last year. You can ask anyone. Absolutely miserable. No reason you shouldn't be coming into Tempe and beating them last year. And it was pitiful. And then to score 7 at Stanford, also one of the worst Power 5 teams in the nation. They were a laughingstock. Those 2 combined wins were those 2 losses were dreadful. And to find a whole year, yeah, he needs a massive bounce back this year, I'd say, because otherwise they won't keep him around much longer.
They will not. They will not. In terms of the draft history, 2024 actually had 3 drafted players. Jaden Hicks went to Kansas City. The DB, the defensive end, Brennan Jackson, went to the LA Rams. And the cornerback, Chow Smith-Wade, went to Carolina. In terms of the Lions last made a pick from Washington State in 2016 at round 5, pick 151, offensive guard, Joe Dahl, who hung around for a bit and then he didn't hang around for a bit. In terms of the results in 2023, opened up 4-0, away at Colorado State, at home to number 19 ranked Wisconsin, at home to Northern Colorado, and then at home to number 14 ranked Oregon State. So 4-0, 2 ranked wins, and then away to UCLA versus Arizona, away to Oregon, away to Arizona State, at home to Stanford, away to Cal, 6 consecutive losses before beating Colorado 56-14, and then ending with a loss away at number 4 ranked Washington 24-21. Another game Washington should have lost. Washington State, if I remember rightly, they committed a really stupid turnover right near the end of the game, and Washington kicked a game-winning field goal. Oh God, it was just a rotten end to the year for them. In terms of the stats, not easy to see what the problem was here. Offense, total offense, 35th. Scoring offense, 37th. So consistent, 421 yards per game on average, 32 points per game on average. The total defense, 78th. They gave up 390 yards per game. The scoring defense, 81st. They gave up 28 points per game on average. And now the offense. The rushing offense was 127th. They rushed for less than 85 yards per game, although they had 17 touchdowns. Their passing offense was fourth in the nation at 336.8 yards per game and 27 touchdowns. Ryan, what do we call that style of offense?
That would be the air raid.
That would be the air raid, but Jake Dickert is not shy in saying that his is actually an air raid. In terms of the defense, the Russian defense was 67th, 150.8 yards per game, but 26 touchdowns. So they weren't good short yardage wise. Passing defense was 89th, just 238 yards per game, but just 14 touchdowns. So teams like to run over the line instead of pass over the line. Sacks, they were 74th with 24. Tackles for loss, they were 93rd with 62. So not great. Sacks allowed, they were 111th. They let Cam Ward get sacked 38 times. Tackles for loss allowed, they were 91st with 75. So the offensive line was not good. Turnover margin, it says 11th here. I think it's 111th. They gained 15. They lost 21. Definitely 111th. This was an air raid team who couldn't stop teams running the ball over the line against them. This is just what happens with the air raid. If you get outscored, time of possession kills you. 85 yards and less per game. That's poor.
Yep, and an air raid offense predicates that you've got to have a fast release. If Cam Ward held the ball for more than 2 seconds, he got sacked. That offensive line was dreadful. He could not afford to get past his second read, or the offensive line had fallen a bit. So it was dreadful. That's one of the biggest issues they've got.
And the fact he did so well there is just like indicative of how good a quarterback he is. The fact that he was getting murdered most games. But in terms of 2024, how do things look for them? And I mean, it's not much better than Oregon State, to be fair, although they keep a few more of their guys at quarterback. Obviously, Cameron Ward is gone. He's had a successful few years fronting the air raid for the Cougars offense, but he has gone to pastures new. They lost their Power 4 status. He's gone to Miami of Florida in the ACC to go and ply his trade there. He said no to Florida State on the way, which just makes him a hero in my books as well. In his stead, you've got potentially a two-way battle to succeed him here. And again, like Oregon State, they've picked a successful starter out the FCS to battle an incumbent backup who's not really played as much. So John Mattia has been Ward's backup. He is the most ingrained in the system, but the Cougars threw a wild card in. They picked up the Bryant starting quarterback, Zevi Eckhouse, out of the portal. He's thrown for 6,000 yards and 50 touchdowns in the last 2 seasons. He's rushed for over 800 yards as well, like Ward, so he can use his legs when he needs be. He's got the starting experience. Mattia knows the system better, but on paper, right, air raid offense. I mean, you watch the FCS more. What's the Bryant quarterback like? You reckon he's got a shot?
Yeah. Like I say, Bryant are not a big school, but their offense was pretty heavy. It could pack a punch when it needed to be, and he's pretty experienced. And he's one of those guys that can just stand and deliver. An air raid, I think he'll flourish in an air raid offense. Fast release, big arm, gets through the reads quickly. Like I say, doesn't want to fanny about too much pre-snap. Just give him a spread offense. I think he'll pick defenders off. I think he's got a very good opportunity to come in and take this job. Like I say, because he's a strong-armed quarterback with a lot of yardage that's chewed up defenses. And they're not going to go away from the air raid. They're going to go away, like I say, within 1.5, 2 seconds. That ball's got to be coming out of your hands. Otherwise, you're going to be getting pursued. And that's probably what Zevi kind of predicates himself on. Fast release. And like I say, he's got some couple of favourite targets. If that all breaks down, it's panic stations. But that's all air raid offenses, and that's what Cam Ward did. So he may be the best kind of option to replicate kind of what Cam did.
Yeah. And again, like, you know, when you're in this period of wilderness, why waste time with a boring backup? Go for the exciting FCS guy. See what he can do. Because you never know. You might get... The next... Cam Ward came from the FCS. He's Incarnate Ward quarterback. Remember that Incarnate Ward offense? They did exactly the same. Really?
There's 4 touchdowns did he throw? Something like that.
It was a stupid amount, wasn't it? Like that Incarnate Word side with him in it, and then the second you knew he went to Washington State and went under Dickert, who plays the air raid, you're like, yeah, he's gonna thrive, and he did. So maybe they do that again. So interesting quarterback battle. Would like to see Xavier Eckhouse win that though. In terms of the offense, The offensive coordinator is Ben Arbuckle. It's his second season. Well, it's easy to see what needs to change this year, whether they do that or not, but they got to run the ball more. Arbuckle is incredibly young. He's 28 years old, like 28, and he's already been an offensive coordinator before. And where was the offensive coordinator at before? Western Kentucky. What do Western Kentucky run? The air raid. He is a tried and true scholar of the not an air raid, but it is an air raid offense. They've got nothing returning at running back. Cameron Ward was the leading rusher on the team as the quarterback. In terms of the running backs themselves, the lead rusher was Nakia Watson, had 320 yards, 4 scores, but his eligibility is up. They bring back 2 depth pieces in Dylan Payne and Javensky Schlembacher, but they had 300 yards between them and no portal help has come their way whatsoever. So they are literally relying on their red shirts and 2 guys who've not really done much in the depth room to get them something going there. So you can tell how much care they're putting into the running back room. Offensive line was a mess last season. Ward was getting sacked at a crazy rate, and they couldn't get 90 yards a game on average on the ground. 4 of the 5 starters are back, though. So, like we've said with some of the CUS teams, at the very least, hopefully, continuity leads to a resemblance of growth in the second year. You've got the left tackle Issa Pole, the left guard Christian Hilborn, the right guard Brock Dier, and the right tackle Falili Fa'amoe. But I realized I actually saw earlier he's undergone knee surgery in the offseason, so I don't know whether even he's going to be ready to come back next year. The only loss they did have was their center Connor Gomness, and he was actually the one guy on the line who was really good at pass protection. So basically, you can just say they're starting from scratch when it comes to pass protection. They've brought in the Northern Colorado starting left tackle Austin Lawrence to beef up the competition for Issa Pole. He really struggled at position last year, but outside of that, Washington State seem happy in the guys they have on the roster to provide the competition. There's been no more portal for them. They've lost their top 2 receivers by yards. Josh Kelly, 933 yards. Lincoln Victor, 850 yards. But one of the benefits of the air raid is that it feeds many, and one of their big receiving targets comes back. They've got Kyle Williams, 842 yards, 6 touchdowns to give them an instant legitimate receiving threat, whoever wins the job. Out of the portal, they got Kyle Maxwell from LA Tech, who also play the air raid, so he should know the system this year. 360 yards, 2 scores last season. They got Trey Shackelford from the Austin Peay Governors. He had 800 yards and 6 touchdowns last season. They got Chris Hudson from Oregon. He has over 1,000 receiving yards in the Power 4 with Oregon, so he brings the FBS experience into the room as well as the FCS production coming up. So they do have plenty of contributing depth members. The air raid airs it out to everybody. So the receiver room should actually be fairly healthy going into 2024. In terms of the tight end room, they've got Cooper Mathers. He's a receiving option, 250 yards and a score last year. They got the blocking tight end, Andre Dollar, back, but every single tight end, unshockingly, grades bad against the run. They've got 4 redshirt freshmen in the tight end room, so hopefully investment in past recruiting cycles will pay off for the tight end room this year. So not as bad as Oregon State. You've got 4 starters on your O-line. Even if they're bad, you would hope they're a little better. You've got a good wide receiver room. The running back room, they've just said, screw that, we're not interested. You've got a bit more than Oregon State have, I think is the polite thing to say here.
Yeah, and you've got a simple scheme to teach them. Air raid is not complex. It's all about levels, mismatches. You all go deep. You have hook to curls. You've got floods where one goes deep, one goes cross, one goes short. It's spoon feeding receivers, isn't it? But like I say, they chew up yardage because most of the time you've got at least 4 or 5 on them. Defenses can't cover that. It's physically impossible half the time. Even if they don't respect your run game, someone's usually free. So everyone's the quarterback job. If the offensive line is a little bit better, they could pass for 3,500 yards pretty easily, even on a bad team. So offense should not be a problem at all. like I say, it's going to be, can they run the ball in an air raid offense? That's the big issue.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So they're set up for the way they want to play. And maybe it'll run better. The level of opposition is not as high this year, so we'll see with that. But again, they've not had the massive turnover Oregon State have, but there are a lot of questions to be answered with this team, and teams will fancy getting a shock on them. In terms of the defensive coordinator is Jeff Schmedding. It's his second season. He was a long-term defensive guy at Eastern Washington. He was there 14 years, worked his way all the way up to defensive coordinator before he getting gigs with Boise State and Auburn as DC in the FBS. And now he's come to Oregon State and Washington State. Sorry. This is another team. It needs to find production in the opposition backfield. And I don't know where it's coming from. They've lost the two guys who did it the most. Ron Stone, Brennan Jackson, both in the NFL now, and their 15 sacks have gone with them. To put it into perspective, they had 40 and 46 quarterback pressures respectively last year. The next guy had 16. Like there's just no intermittent in between here. They're two good guys and nobody else. They've gone to the portal. They've got Cyrus Webster, who comes in from Utah Tech. He's been a menace for the last 3 years. He's been consistently good at rushing the passer, holding up the edge against the run. He's a big injection of experience into an edge unit lacking it. But he's coming from Utah Tech. There's going to be a transition period. Nusi Malani, he's one of the DTs, but he shed weight. They're going to kick him out to the edge from what I've read. He showed a knack on the interior for rushing the passer last year. He was one of the guys who got 16 pressures, got himself a couple of sacks as well. But outside of that, you've got seniors, Quinn Roth there, but you've got, again, a lot of redshirt freshmen. They're just going to need to step up to the plate here. You've got to get more sacks on the quarterback. You've got to get more pressure against the run. In terms of the interior, they do return their best defensive tackle. That is David Guster. He had a very solid 2023, but again, they've got to find some pieces to go around him. Most of the depth has left, and not a lot has come in to help them. The team they've gone hard at linebacker. Let's say they've tried to fix that. So they've got their starters back. Kyle Thornton, Tariq Alukta, both returned, 2 of the 3 starters, sorry. They've got a lot of company from the portal to flesh out the room. You've got Keith Brown, who's come from Louisville in the Power 4. Parker McKenna, he is a starter from Portland. He's an elite graded run defender, also has a bit of pass rush ability as well. Team desperately needs that. You've got Wesley Steiner as well. He had over 500 snaps for the Auburn Tigers in the SEC. So actually, you've got a solid base there, and you've brought in a ton of legitimate production to come with it. So the linebackers might be in a good place, but the secondary, that is going to be unrecognizable. The star safety, Jaden Hicks, is gone. His running mate at starter, Sam Lockett, ran out of eligibility, so that's the safeties done. At corner, Chow Smith Wade went to the draft. Cam Lampkin, he was an undrafted free agent. You've literally lost pretty much every single starter you had on there. They do keep the starting nickel corner, Kapina Gushikan. They have got some help in the portal. You got the starting safety, Jeray Williams. He comes from UNLV. You got the starting Akron safety, Tyson Durant, as well. So you've kind of filled the holes in the safety room. But again, with the corners, a lot of it is going to have to come from guys on their roster already who've not contributed as much. Few rotational guys, but yeah, this is a room that they've gone after the linebackers hard, but in terms of the line and the secondary, they're saying to the guys in house, this is your opportunity now. This is probably going to be another transition year for this defense. You're going to figure.
Yeah, they're putting a lot of onus on inside and outside linebacker play because, like I said, with Brennan Jackson gone, who I liked, and other guys, there is no real pass rush left of any real note. And we've noticed, like I said, that they struggled last year. If a quarterback can just pitch a tent, he'll eventually pick off your secondary if you can't get to him. And that's the number one thing this year. Don't matter who's in the secondary, if the quarterback is too comfortable behind the offensive line, you're never going to stop him. So that is going to have to be their bread and butter this year. Find creative ways, whether it's stunts, twists, blitzes, get the defensive backs involved. Going to have to disrupt and get tackles for loss and get safeties and get QB hits. It's going to have to be a team effort, like say from the line right back to the safeties, because they do not have the middle to do it themselves. So that's where they will do or die.
Yeah, absolutely. And say you've not even got the secondary. You had a good secondary last year. You don't have that now. Like so many of those guys they were high level guys. Jaden Hicks was really good. Charles Smith Wade, we loved him in the pre-draft cycle. You got to replace these guys, and it's just not easy to get their level of productivity back right away. In terms of the schedule, again, I feel like this is really rough for them going forward. So you start off with Portland State at home. Then you've got Texas Tech and Washington at home. Or in fact, I think Washington, the Apple Cup, they're playing it at Seattle Stadium, the NFL Stadium, Lumen Field. So it's technically a neutral venue, but you're still playing Texas Tech and Washington back to back. Then you're playing San Jose State at home. And then on the road in the Mountain West, you've got Boise State and Fresno State back to back. Then you've got Hawaii at home. Then you've got to go to San Diego State on the road. Then you're home to Utah State. Then you're away at New Mexico. You're away at Oregon State. And you finish with Wyoming. I mean, Texas Tech and Washington at home. And then Fresno State, Boise State, Oregon State on the road. I mean, just how tough is that going to be for them?
A lot of teams are going to be sizing them up, like say Fresno State. They're going to look at them and think we could have our way with you. We're a big fish in a small pond in the Mountain West. You can't just come in here and have your way with us. Like I say, Texas Tech, very talented side. Like you say, guys like that. Wyoming, that's a very difficult last game of the season. Like I say, that could cap off what could be a very ugly year because the Cowboys, they're actually been very productive in recent years and they've been very close, like I say, making championship runs. So it's a pretty grim schedule. Like I say, a team that one can't stop the run. What do Wyoming do well? They run the ball. They were really good at running ball in recent years. A lot of teams there can run the ball. Like you say, Texas Tech, great at running the ball. They've got one of the best returning running backs in the entire country. So a lot of teams there are strong, and this team here is not good at it.
No. I feel like I've been quite harsh on the two Pac-2 teams here, but again, when you're losing so much talent and you're replacing it in one go, and they're not Power Four teams no more, so the level of recruit, a lot of the recruits have gone. We're in uncharted territory here. Like teams like this don't implode so quickly and then are in such a different situation. So I just don't know what's going to happen. They both might run the Mountain West and we might look silly, but I don't see it. I really don't see it in terms of the guy to watch on this team. I mean, again, it's quite tough. It's an air raid offense, so you're going to figure you're going to look at one of the receivers in there, but maybe it'll be the quarterback. Is if Sevi Eckhouse wins this starting job here, I think he's going to have a fantastic. Like Ryan said, he could throw for 3,500, 4,000 yards in this air raid offense, and somebody's going to go with him. Maybe go for one of the safe options with the receivers. Obviously, they have a legitimate receiver in Kyle Maxwell. Maybe he goes, Kyle Williams, sorry. Maybe he goes over 1,000 yards this year, really goes home with it. But Eckhouse he could be the guy in the quarterback room there. But it's like the defense and that, I've just no idea. So that is it for Washington State. And that is it for the show. So thank you again to everyone who's listened into this. We have talked this evening about Notre Dame, UMass, UConn, Oregon State, Washington State. I mean, before we sign off, right, I guess, how do you reckon, if you're gonna, I know we might do this as a bold prediction in our prediction show before the season, but, how do you think the Pac-2 teams will do this year? Like, if you're going to put records on them, like, where would you put them at? 'Cause I'm intrigued to see what we think and where they end up.
Going to come down to quarterback play. I'd give them both like 6 to 8 wins. Both should make a bowl game. It'll depend what game they make.
Yeah,
I
I
can't
think
see them not. I can't see them not making a bowl game.
no. I would put, I'd say 8 wins for Washington State, 7 for Oregon State. I'm going to put them in that bracket for
I
now.
think Washington State should be better.
Yeah, they've got a bit
more returning talent in the wide receiver room.
They've got a bit more continuity, a little bit more. Like Oregon State's just so difficult because they've just lost so much. So yeah, that one is tough. Right. That is all for this evening. So again, thank you to everyone who's joined us for our Independents and PAC 2 review. In terms of next shows, the main Roar of the Lions UK podcast will be back on Monday. So come check us out for that. Not sure what we're doing yet. We will find something. In terms of the college pod, next week it's going to be me. Ryan is going to be in Japan. So Ryan, I hope you have a wonderful time on holiday. So jealous that you get to go out to Japan there. But I'm going to come on and do a college Q&A, answer some questions, have a little chat with you. We'll do a live stream so you can come on and ask me questions. But if there's anything you want me to research beforehand, I've had questions about which rooms are the, which position groups are the strongest this year, edges, all that sort of stuff. So if you want a better answer, give me more time to answer it. Put it in the comments, put it in the chat, whatever, and we'll do that. And then me and Ryan will be back in 2 weeks when he's back from Japan and well rested. You can find us at Roar of the Lions UK all over the internet, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all that good stuff. Just type the name in, you'll find us. Ryan, anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
No, I think we're firmly in the teams are now laying out their depth charts. I think by next time we speak, we might know who some of these starting quarterbacks are.
Hope so.
Think so anyway.
Makes it a lot easier when you do. So yeah, it's going to be fun. We probably will move. We probably do the Sun Belt when it's back, but we'll see. Sun Belt's the one I've started on. Sun Belt, Fun Belt, all good stuff. Right. Have a great day, everyone. See you soon. And we just remains me to say, one pride.